that will come back as a response to this. Question is, are you content with how your life is being led right now? Are you content with how you're living your life right now, how you're conducting your affairs on your path to your ultimate goal? Are you doing everything in your capacity? I can already hear the excuses. Whoa, easy. I can't process all of them at the same time. I'm working on it, this ability to read minds. Maybe I'm on the wrong channel, but all I'm hearing is excuses. Let's try and tune that a little bit more. No, I'm still getting excuses. So you're not content? Are you telling me that you're not doing everything you need to do to get to your goal? Why is that? Excuses? You know what Guru Hamdru says about excuses, right? We'll accept all your excuses. We are fine with that. But who he calls your father, Sasara, Sansar, doesn't accept excuses. Doesn't accept extenuating circumstances. You've either got the right answer or the wrong answer. Excuses don't hold. And that's a real shame. I can almost sense this tension that you might sometimes have in your mind, in your minds and in your hearts. So, you come along to sermons and we really talk to you about Nibbana and why you must do everything in your ability to get there and why you should accelerate your journey. And then sometimes I know and I can sense, in your minds you're going, yes, we get that and I really want to do it. But there are so many other factors that keep me from doing that. So many other factors that are holding me back. So many barriers out there that I have to jump over. What can I do? Again, excuses. Whether they're fair or unfair, they're still an excuse. Some people just don't know. That's the best excuse. I didn't know. Even that is irrelevant. You do something wrong. I didn't know it was wrong. Irrelevant. You lie, you kill, you steal. I didn't know it was wrong. I don't care. You know how young boys say, or young lads, they say, talk to the hand. You say something, they talk to the hand. Meaning, the hand doesn't respond to it. So you can say whatever you like, I'm not buying it. This is why we constantly try to encourage you. Try and find ways to overcome your obstacles. This has to be an active, proactive activity in your lives. In your lives. Because no matter what those excuses are, ladies and gentlemen, when the final test is up, you've got to respond to it. And then none of us are there to help you. The person sat next to you is not there to help you then. Your mother and your father are not going to be there way around to help you. Not even the Buddha is there to help you then. Then you have to fight this battle alone. While you're in training, we can help you. We can train you to fight. We can help you to learn to fight. We can help you to pick the right weapons and be good at using those weapons. But when the battle is in front of you, now you've got to fight alone. Another week's gone by, and you're a week closer to that battle. We met on a Sunday just like today, a week ago. So I have to ask the question, how much and what have you done over the last week to get you to your goal? Answer that question in your own minds. And then I'll ask you the first question I asked. Are you content? Have you done enough? Remember in the last meditation program, I reminded you all to do something. So next week is going to be another session. So a month, take away a week ago, I reminded you at the end of the meditation program to do something at home. Do you remember what that was? Those who came along might remember. What was that? 15 minutes. I said make sure you find 15 minutes every day to meditate. And what did we say that you had to do as meditation? Keep reciting. Keep reciting what? Sri Lanka Mata? Keep reciting what? No, it wasn't to keep reciting, was it? No, it was to contemplate. It was to reflect on the Dhamma. Because remember I said this is about, it's trying to learn a new language. All this time you've looked at the world as being Nitya Sukha Atta. Pleasurable, joyful and essenceful. Now you're learning to look at the world from a completely brand new perspective. One we've never seen before. A perspective we've never looked through, a lens we've never looked through in all of samsara. So this is why it's new, this is why it feels uncomfortable sometimes. Because we're all novices to this practice. None of us have mastered it yet. We're all novices to this practice. But it will only be perfect through practice. Practice makes perfect. So have you been doing it over the past 3 weeks or so? 15 minutes every day? So now I'm going to ask you to put your hand up. At the count of 3. You can't lie to me, because that would be a sin. So on the count of 3, I want you all to put your hand up. To admit, no, not to admit, but to confirm that over the last 3 weeks, since the meditation program, you have been practicing at least a 15-minute session of meditation. Okay? So 1, 2. It's okay, I won't. Good. So that is something that is a very good thing to get into the habit of. To constantly be reflecting on anicca dukkha anatta. To constantly be in vidarshana. It's not easy to do that though. Because chances are, imagine you're driving or you're cooking. it's difficult to reflect on anicca dukkha anatta while you're doing something which, if one moment where you lose your attention, and the consequences can be dire, can be disastrous. It's things that we do in life. There are others, like you could be sweeping the house, washing the dishes, washing your clothes, right? In those moments, of course, you can contemplate on anicca dukkha anatta. Oh, when you're eating, yes. So pratyaveksha is absolutely that. So if you've been coming along to the SIL programs, we do a pratyaveksha before we eat our food, right? Pratyaveksha is to contemplate. Generally people think that the pratyaveksha is a sentence or a line that you say before you start eating. So you just memorize it, you get it memorized by heart, and you just say it. Patisankhayo niso pindapatam patisevami nevadavaya namadaya namandanaya. Come on, already I need to dig myself into this food. It's just so delicious. Can we hurry this up? That's not pratyaveksha. That's just reciting something. That's just reciting a few words, meaningless. Whereas true pratyaveksha is what you are doing there, which is every mouthful you take, whenever you sense, taste, smell, and the touch, the physical sensation of food on your tongue, in your mouth, on your fingertips, you reflect on their true nature. Because by default, we see a false nature. This is our default notion of the world. Our default perspective of the world is to see it as being nitya sukha atta. This is why when you see food, your mouth starts watering. Do you not have that problem? It will be different what that item of food is for every one of you. For someone it might be chocolates. Others it might be pizza. Others it might be biryani or KFC. It's different. But whatever it is, there can't be anything in food or the smell of food in the real world that gets your mouth to start watering. Not before the food has touched your tongue. But in the false world, the world that you create, because this is karma. This is the sensual world that you create in your own mind. You're seeing something, you're smelling something, and in your mind you've created this sensual world. This is what ashvada is, pleasure is. It's a fabrication. It's artificial. Ashvada, pleasure, is artificial. It's not natural. It's not real. It's fake. So what is fake, what is artificial, you can create, you can fabricate in your own mind. And now this is what you start to experience. You live in a dream. Sensuality is a dream. Karma is a dream. So you go into dream mode, and now in your dream, you're experiencing whatever you like. It's not the real thing. It's not the real deal. So as you're looking at the food, your mouth starts watering. This is the perfect moment to practice your vidarshana. Because you know there's a problem. But you see, to practice vidarshana, first you have to accept that there's a problem here. But every man and his dog out there will not agree with you that that's a problem. In fact, if someone asks you, what is your favorite dish, right? A friend accompanies you to a restaurant, and they ask you, hey, what would you like to have today? Let's have a look at the menu. Oh, I think this is delicious, you should really try this. And you go, whatever. They're going to think you're depressed. Warning. They're going to think you're depressed. You might have tried it already. This is why when you're out there in society, you have to put up appearances. You have to put on a show. You know fully well that none of these items of food can actually bring me pleasure. Not mentally. Physically, yes. If I'm hungry, food can sate my hunger. But there is not a single dish on this menu that can bring me mental pleasure. Because pleasure is nothing but the result of relief from vexation. and nothing else. You see, if you break these two processes down, actually there are two distinctive processes. Process number 1. Rupa Vedana Sanya Sankara Vijnana. That's the input. The bit that happens in the middle, the processor bit, is attachment. The output of that is vexation. This is process number 1. There's an input and there's an output, and there's something that happens in the middle. This is why it's called a process. Every process has an input and an output, right? The input to process number 1 is Rupa Vedana Sanya Sankara Vijnana, and the output is vexation. What happens in the middle is attachment. That's a very distinctive individual process. Process number 2 also has an input and an output. Input to process number 2 is vexation. The output is pleasure. What happens in the middle, the processing bit, is relief from vexation or abhisankara. That is a distinctive, separate process. They are not one and the same. But it's the output of the first process that is the input of the second process. So if you can imagine, just have an imaginary picture, right, in your mental picture, two processes. I'm air drawing here. Can you see me? Right? Process 1, process 2. Input, process, output. Input, process, output. Process number 1. Rupa Vedana Sanya Sankara Vijnana. That's the input. The processing bit is attachment. The output is vexation. That's a separate process. Now we've gone through it, put it to a side. Process number 2. Input is vexation. The processing bit is abhisankara. The output is ashvada, or pleasure. That's a separate process. Yes, the input or the output of the first process is the input to the second process. But they're not the same process. So what is avidya? What is ignorance? The ignorance is not being able to see that these are two separate processes. And therefore, there's a veil that covers the truth. So what you then see through ignorance is the input of the first process is directly connected to the output of the second process. So what was the input of the first process? Rupa Vedana Sanya Sankara Vijnana. Output of the second process? Ashvada, or pleasure. Everything in the middle you're blinded to. That blindness is ignorance. That is what ignorance is. Not seeing the truth. You know, in the second process, the only thing you can feed into that second process is vexation. It does not have a receptor for Rupa Vedana Sanya Sankara Vijnana. Yes, the output is pleasure, but it does not have a receptor which can take in Rupa Vedana Sanya Sankara Vijnana. Imagine it had a shape of some sort. We are drawing this process out as a model. It's got a shape like this. Right? It's circular, like a sphere. Rupa Vedana Sanya Sankara Vijnana is the input of the first process. And if you were to draw out a model of that, the shape of that is a box. Does it fit? I've got a sphere. On the other hand, I've got a box. Square or rectangular box or a cuboid. Does it fit? No, it doesn't fit. So you can't feed Rupa Vedana Sanya Sankara Vijnana into the second process and expect pleasure. It just doesn't work like that. Technical impossibility. It can only go into the first process. The first process can accept Rupa Vedana Sanya Sankara Vijnana because it's got a receptor that takes in, that is compatible with Rupa Vedana Sanya Sankara Vijnana, the five aggregates. You feed them the five aggregates and the output of that is only vexation. Nothing else comes out of it. Nothing else. Zilch. Nothing else. Simply vexation. But take the output of that, feed it into the second process, and now you get pleasure. Ignorance of all that happens in the middle gives you the impression that it was the input of the first process, that was the output of the second process. That is the doctrine. So when you ask the Dharmayai, this is what you have to say. Simple as that. Once you have accepted that this is actually what's going on, and no one in this world, in these 31 world systems, can change your acceptance of this truth, now you have become a Sotapanna. So then you know, hand on heart, there is no one that can convince me otherwise. Even if the Buddha were to come around and say, no, actually, you know what? Rupa, that brings pleasure. Sorry, Buddha, you got it wrong. You have to have the confidence to speak up to the Buddha and say, I'll worship you, but I will not accept what you're saying. You may be the supremely enlightened one, but your enlightenment has gone wrong. It's not correct. It cannot be true. You have to have the confidence to stand up even to the Buddha. Not that he would ever say that, but that is the level of conviction which you must have. That is what Shraddha is. It's coming to that understanding. Because until then, it's simply faith. Until then, you will say, if someone asks, like in sermons I've been noticing lately, right? A lot of the time, Guru Hamdru asks, Mogak nisada pelen? Tanha nisai pelen. What is the cause of vexation? Attachment is the cause of vexation. But people have just by-hearted this now. It just rolls off the tongue. You got to be careful. This is seriously, this is a word of warning. Because when you hear the same thing over and over and over and over and over again, like they do with marketing, you're simply going to take it as the truth without analyzing and checking and verifying if that is really the truth. Then it doesn't become comprehension. It doesn't go from Terum Ganima to Avbodha, understanding to comprehension. It doesn't make that jump until you make it real for yourself. Today I want to really talk to you a little bit about dukkha. Because a lot of the times I get this question, and I've been noticing this in a lot of the sermons. People get anicca now. But sometimes dukkha is not very clear. So I get questions like, someone asks, okay, I get anicca. But we kind of seem like gloss over dukkha. Anicca is pelenava, enisa dukkai, anattai. What's the difference? What is the difference between pelim and dukkha? Is it one and the same? Is vexation and suffering the same thing? Because it seems like it sometimes. Anyone likes to vex? Nobody likes vexation. Well, nobody likes suffering, so they must be the same thing. It's not the same thing. So I'll talk to you a little bit about that today, because in the meditation program next week, I want you all to reflect on that, to contemplate on dukkha, the dukkha nature of all conditioned things. Because all three attributes, anicca, dukkha and anatta, understanding of which is essential if Nibbana is your ultimate goal. You can't just gloss over one. He says the advent of a Buddha is rare. Being born a human is rare, he says. Shana Sampatti. To be born with all our faculties in place, to be born in a time where we are able to listen to the Buddha's teaching, all of this is rare. But then he says the Dhamma is what is most rare. So even the advent of a Buddha is less rare than you getting to hear his teaching. Because the Dhamma is what is most rare. So we need to spend some time just to understand what is this dukkha and why is it not the same as anicca. Otherwise he could have just said anicca, anatta. In anatta, I think a lot of people get the idea. Yes, it's asarai, right? Meaningless, essenceless, futile, there's no point. But he says yada nicchantan dukkha. So there is a link between anicca and dukkha, but it's not one and the same. It's not anicca equals dukkha. Anicca, arrow, dukkha, arrow, anatta, not equals. So what's the difference there? We know now this anicca, what we explain here is this vexation. Telima, right? You all understand that. It's the vexation that we experience. Because whenever the mind arises and passes away, for as long as there's attachment, and whenever someone gives you a drushti, a view about something as being pleasurable, now you start to vex. Mentally, vex. This is not physical. We're not worrying about the physical aspect of anything here. We're talking about the mental aspect. The moment this view has been planted in your mind, you now start to vex. Do you remember last week, I think, I talked to you about someone being stuck in traffic on the motorway or the highway? You're stuck in traffic and the exit you want to take is closed for roadworks. Now you have a choice because there's a detour. You can either stay in traffic until the roadblock is removed, or you can take an exit. Did I mention this last week? It was the previous week. Okay, week before. So you're stuck in traffic. It's a long queue of traffic. And you've been trudging along this queue of traffic until you've got to this point where now you can see the roadworks. The moment the roadworks are removed, it's now your turn to take the exit. But you've got to wait until the roadworks are removed. But patience is a virtue, and a virtue that not many people have. So you wait, and wait, and wait, until you can no longer wait. Now you have reached the limit of your patience. So therefore you can no longer wait. Now you take the detour. It's not labeled a detour. But because you can't wait, you can't tolerate this vexation you're feeling right now, you want to take that other detour. So you do take it. The curse of this is, what this detour does is actually, when you drive along it, it takes you all the way back. A nice long round, all the way back to where you first joined this line of traffic. Has that ever happened to you? I've experienced this firsthand. I almost kicked myself. Because I couldn't bear the traffic, I couldn't bear to wait. It's not the traffic, I could have just switched off my engine and waited there until the roadworks got removed. But I couldn't wait. Because I wasn't patient. So I wanted to move. Because I couldn't bear this vexation, I started to move. So I took the detour, but little did I know that this line of this road was only going to take me back to the beginning of this line of traffic. Now I am worse off than I was before. I was better off just staying where I was. This is like abhisankara. Abhisankara is much the same. Because the reason we do abhisankara is to relieve ourselves of vexation. But when you relieve yourself from vexation, like Guru Hamdar has been explained to you recently, it's like jumping from the pan to the fire. Kabaling, lipata. You're worse off than you started. You're better off actually staying where you are. But we have little patience. Therefore, when we try to bear this vexation, we'll do it for a moment, another moment, another moment. These moments of vexation, they keep building up. Vexation builds up. It keeps building up until the last straw that breaks the camel's neck or the camel's back. So it keeps building up until that last chitta of vexation, which beyond that you just can't tolerate it. Now I need to relieve myself. And then you go into doing abhisankara. So now you exert your mind, you exert your speech, and you exert your body to relieve yourself of the vexation you were in a moment ago. This is abhisankara. Abhisankara dukkha. But no matter what exertion you do, what abhisankara you do know now that whatever arises has to pass away. So whatever you do to give rise to a chitta, it's going to pass away ultimately. So you're in the same place you started. Except you also had to endure the abhisankara that you had to exert. It's like you're standing in one place. You don't like the ground touching your feet. You just don't like the ground touching your feet. You don't like that experience. So what you can do now is jump. If you don't like the ground touching your feet, what can you do? You can't wear any footwear. What's the only option? You can jump. If you haven't got wings to fly, the only thing you can do is jump. So you jump. But after you jump, what's going to happen? You're going to come back onto the ground, because gravity is going to pull you back onto the ground. Now what's happening? Your feet are back on the ground. You don't like your feet touching the ground. Well, that's where you were before, and that's where you are now. Plus the bodily exertion that you had to put to relieve yourself of that vexation because you didn't like it. So are you better off or worse off? Actually, are you better off, the same, or worse off? Pick the right answer. A, better off. B, the same. C, worse off. C. Abhisankara is like that. What was the point of jumping? You are not only back on your feet touching the ground, but you also had to exert the energy that required you to jump off the ground. So you are that much energy less or short of, and your feet are still back on the ground. Remember we used to talk about a glowing hot bowl and throwing that up in the air? Right? If I were to give you a hot bowl, iron bowl, into your hands, right? You don't like to burn. So your fingers are now scorching. What can you do? You can do one of two things. You can throw it up, or you can let it fall. You can let it drop. But people like the experience of pleasure. People love pleasure. Pleasure can only be experienced when you are relieved of pain. So for there to be pleasure, there has to be pain. You can't have one and not the other. So what if you drop the bowl? Common sense says, drop the bowl. But there's a problem. You like pleasure. If you like pleasure, then dropping the bowl is out of the question. Why? Because the moment you drop the bowl, well, you're only going to be relieved of vexation once. You're going to be relieved of pain, yes, but only momentarily. You can't experience the same pleasure again. You've dropped the ball. So the only way you can experience pleasure is by to keep throwing this ball up in the air. The moment you throw it up, a few moments later it's going to come back down and it's going to burn your fingers again. Now it's hurting again. Now it's burning again. So what do? Throw it back up. Every time this ball is removed from your fingers, now you feel pleasure. And when you are attached to that pleasure, you have no choice but to experience the pain that comes along with it. Until you accept that this pleasure is a nonsense. It's nonsensical to keep going after this pleasure. It's madness. Only a lunatic would do that. What does that make us all? If only a lunatic would do that, what does that make us all? Lunatics. We are all crazy. We are on the wrong side of the fence of the mental hospital. At least they have an excuse. We don't. They have been clinically diagnosed as mental patients, and we are not. But we are still on the wrong side of the fence. Don't you think so? It is madness. This attachment to pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, this is a curse. This is the biggest curse. So what is this dukkha? When you can't bear vexation, when you can't tolerate vexation, or when you experience vexation, you've got one of two choices. Actually, there's a third choice. So this is the third choice that I'm talking about. One, when you're experiencing vexation, or this pelima, you can continue to tolerate it. That's why the Buddha says, Kanti paramang tapotitikka. This is patience. Practice patience. Be patient. Be even more patient. Be patient as much as you possibly can. So this is tolerating it. Right? I'm feeling vexation, but I'm not going to do anything about it. I'm going to continue to bear it. But you can only do it for so long. There's none among us whose patience is unlimited. Unless you're an arahant. Unless you're an arahant, all of us have a limit to patience. All of us have a limit to how much we can bear, how much we can tolerate. I'm not talking about physical, by the way. This is not physical pain I'm talking about. I'm talking about mental vexation. We all have a limit. Until we hit that limit, we can tolerate it. That is option number one. When you hit that limit, now you have no choice but to embrace the dukkha. Embrace the suffering. Why do I say that? Because once you have hit your limit, now you have to relieve yourself of that vexation. And for that you have to do abhisankara. But abhisankara was never fun. You know how people say, I really enjoy my work? People say that, right? Work is fun. Some people say that. And then they talk about a work-life balance. I don't know why they talk about a work-life balance if work is fun. Because if work is fun, then the only way that balance has to tip is which way? Towards work. The more work you do, the more fun it's going to be. So why do people look forward to a weekend then? If work is fun, what must you all do on weekends also? Work. But then why do people talk about a Friday feeling? And why do people hate Mondays? And yet, in the same breath, they say, oh, I love my job. What a load of toss. That's just utter bull. Fill in the blank. Work cannot be fun. That's abhisankara. Getting your paycheck at the end of the month, now that is fun. Or maybe you have someone on the side that you get to see when you go to work. Now that can be fun. But work cannot be fun. There is no way work can be fun. Exerting yourself physically, that cannot be fun. exerting yourself mentally, that cannot be fun. Abhisankara cannot be fun. If it were fun, then you should be able to do it constantly, non-stop. Day after day after day after day, you should continue to be able to keep doing it. So why do people go on vacation then? Why do people take holidays? Why do people take time off? Work cannot be fun. It just cannot. It's impossible for work to be fun. Now that's not to say let's all stop working. Because we have to. We have to keep working because there are other vexations that come through in our life, and the only way we can relieve ourselves from that vexation is if we work, because there's a big fat paycheck that comes through at the end of the month. Some people I know, they go to work because staying at home is boring. Some people are like that. They'll find work to go to because staying at home is just boring, simply boring. I have no one to talk to. At least if I go to work, I get someone to talk to, have a cup of tea, right? People say, therefore, that work is fun. No. Relief from vexation is fun. Now you're going to work because you just don't like boredom. You're feeling boredom, therefore you want to relieve yourself from that vexation, therefore you believe work is fun. But that's not what you're after. Some people, they volunteer, right? Volunteering is a really good thing to do. I have no arguments about that. You volunteer, and sometimes people do social volunteering, like maybe help the elderly, okay? Or perhaps go and help out in an old people's home, an orphanage, or whatever. Unless you're an arahant, I will not accept that you're doing it wholly for the other person's happiness. There's always something you're looking for in return. You give an old man, or let's say a beggar on the street, you give them a parcel of food. They spit back at you. Take this and give me some money, you idiot. They say in return, this is what you get in return for giving them a parcel of food. How are you going to feel then? If you're in the Dhamma, and if you have been practicing the Dhamma, therefore less expectations than you used to have, then you'll be fine. But until then, until such time where you have no self to preserve, until such time where there's no self on the inside that has to be preserved, whatever someone says, any words of abuse or slander or fault finding that comes your way, this is a target. This is an attack on the self, and none of us are comfortable with that. Even for one tiny split of a second, you're going to feel a sense of animosity. You're going to feel anger, resentment. Why you just talk to me like that? You shouldn't have said that. I'm here to help you, and you spat back at me. That's a very nasty thing to do. And you feel anger. So still expecting something in return. When I used to want to become a doctor, people used to tell me that, being a doctor, it's a really nice thing to do because you get to help patients, and therefore it's fun being a doctor. Then I went and talked to some of the doctors. I spent some time in hospitals working with them, shadowing GPs and things like that. And then some of the doctors I interviewed, they said to me, some days it's just hectic. It's just madness, because sometimes you get to talk to some of the patients and they're so ungrateful. Right? They talk to us like dirt. Sometimes they have no respect towards the doctor that's helping them out, and that really frustrates me. That infuriates me. So you're helping them, expecting a thank you in return, aren't you? At least a thank you. At least a smile. You help someone, they don't smile back at you. That's unsettling a little bit. You give something to somebody and they don't say thank you. How does that make you feel? Ever heard that story of the mother and the young boy? So this mother, she was trying to train her son, the child, to say thank you. She said, Puta, if someone gives you something, you have to say thank you, okay? And the Puta says, okay, Amma. That's not his plan. He doesn't like saying thank you. So this one day, someone comes around and gives this child an apple or something like that. He says, here you go, Puta. So the child takes his apple. The mother goes, right, what are you supposed to say now? No, I'm not going to say it. Says, what did I tell you? You have to say what? Say thank you to that uncle? No, I'm not going to say it. Puta, say thank you. No, I'm not going to say it. This is the last warning. Puta, say thank you. Uncle, you can keep your apple. I'm not going to say thank you. When you give something to somebody, you know, there is that little tiny voice on the inside going, okay, they're going to say thank you now. They're going to be grateful. They're at least going to smile and accept. Hold the door open for them so that you let them walk through as well. In some countries it's not the done thing, but in other countries they do that. When you do that gesture for somebody, you expect them to say thank you, but sometimes they don't. And when you don't hear that thank you, or at least a smile of gratitude, or expressing gratitude, that doesn't sit with you very well. It upsets you just that tiny little bit. Again, this is expectation. You're attached to that thank you. You're attached to that smile. You're attached to that gratitude, that expression of gratitude, and you're expecting that to come. It's going to come now. Come on, say thank you. If only they could read your mind, this is what you'd be saying. Come on, already, right? They say thank you, right? Quick, come on. I've got to go, right? I'll open the door for you. And then you start vexing. So, if you can do this on a regular basis, day-to-day activities, let's say you're in traffic, someone's trying to pull up, or someone's turning in from a side road. Now, I don't know about Sri Lanka, but in a lot of other countries, if someone's trying to turn onto the main road from the side road, it's generally the gentlemanly thing to do is to let them join the line of traffic. But apparently it's a gentlemanly thing here is not to let that happen. Different cultures. Who am I to complain? Right? So when you wave someone into to join the line of traffic, or to jump in front of you, generally you expect them to either wave at you from the window, so you can see them from their rear mirror, rear window, or at least to flash, to say thank you, or at least to wave their hand just to acknowledge, right? Thanks for doing that. And so some people actually do it and wait. They're waiting for that. I used to do this. You wait, right? Come on, say thanks, right? I've just shown you kindness. Now it's your duty to show gratitude. Come on. And when it doesn't come, now you start to complain. Ungrateful bugger. You start to have a moan about it. Expectation always leads to suffering. Even before your expectation has been dashed, even before your expectation has been dashed, you're expecting. Even that is suffering. That is the dukkha. So, most of you get what abhisankara dukkha is, right? Which is exerting mind, body and speech in order to achieve what it is you desire. You have to do things, you have to say things, you have to think things. to achieve what you desire, to acquire what you desire. That's the abhisankara dukkha. And it's not fun doing it. The only reason you do it is so that you can acquire what you desire. Right? You wouldn't do it otherwise. If there wasn't the promise of pleasure at the end of it, you wouldn't do any of those things. Would you? If there wasn't the promise of pleasure? How many hours have you spent on the roof trying to tune your antenna to catch the TV channels on your television? Right? If you moved to a new home lately, or if you remember the last time you had to do this, you have your antenna on the roof, and now someone goes on the roof, the other person's in the living room. Yeah, a bit to the left, right, a little bit more to the right. Oh no, that's too much. Come on, try back again to this, to the little to the left. How many hours have you spent trying to tune your antenna? Adjust your antenna so you can get the right TV channels. Would you do it if it wasn't for the pleasure? You enjoy watching TV. You enjoy the pleasure that you can experience when you get to see the sights that you like to see. This is why you are exerting yourself. But if there was no TV, would you still do this? Go on the roof, pole connected to the antenna, just keep turning this antenna left, right. Okay, little to the left, a bit more to the right, no, too much, little to the left. There's no TV. You wouldn't do this. If you ever baked a cake, think back through the steps that you had to follow to bake the cake. Right? You had to go shopping first. Get yourself a cookery book, go through the ingredients, go through the recipe, right? And then buy all the items you need, come home and start making your cake, flour and water, and now you have to start kneading it, and then start adding whatever things you add to it to make your cake, put it in the oven, right? All this for the promise of pleasure that comes at the end of it. If you knew that this cake was going to be burnt in the oven, would you have started doing it in the first instance? If you could look into the future and you knew that this cake is going to come out of the oven burnt, would you still do it? Would you? No. So was it the abhisankara that's enjoyable? No, you don't enjoy that. In fact, if the cake did come out burnt, you're going to say, what a waste of a day. I wasted my time. I'm never going to bake a cake again. Sometimes you curse the author of the recipe book. Look at these instructions. I followed it to the letter, and still I didn't get the result I was expecting. This is all fake. This is all made up stuff. You can't make a cake like this. Now you start cursing them. If abhisankara was fun, well, you followed it to the letter. So abhisankara is not fun. But neither is dukkha dukkha. It's the what if. Have you done your what if analysis? People do what if analysis. What if this happens? What if that happens? Is it fun to think about the what ifs? This is like when you're doing projects, you have to think forward about risks. Right? What if this happens? What if that happens? Is it fun? Who enjoys doing risk? It's some of the most hated jobs. Risk. Working in risk. People just didn't... I remember when I used to work in projects. If ever a project manager got told off, it was because he hadn't done his risks properly. Because people just don't enjoy risk, because you have to think about what if this happens, what if that happens, what if this happens. That's not the fun bit. The fun bit is getting the outcome of the project, because that is what you have set your expectation on. Then you keep working through the project until you get the output that you're expecting. The what ifs are always suffering. What if it rains today? What if it doesn't rain today? What if a bomb goes off? What if? What if I get that call? What if I don't get that call? What if he turns up at the door? What if he doesn't? What if I get that job? And what if I don't get that job? Always what if. You're driving your car. There's a bus in front of you. And like most buses in Sri Lanka, no brake lights. Now, what if? And a three-wheel driver's on your right-hand side, trying to take over, or trying to do an overtaking maneuver. What if? He's coming very close to your car. Now, what if? This what if question starts burning inside your mind, does it not? What if he comes too close? Nothing's happened yet. Your car is in perfect tip-top condition. Nothing's happened. But what if? You go, when you park your car, right, gentlemen, do you not check if you've ever parked under a tree? What's the first thing you do after you get out of the car? Why do you look up? Are you praying to the gods? Oh dear God, please protect my car. Is that why you look up? Is that why you look up? No, you've just parked under a tree. What grows on trees? Fruits, and sometimes coconuts. Sometimes it's birds on the branches of the trees. And birds have laser sharp what? Focus when it comes to doing their number twos. They'll wait and wait and wait until you come and park your car. They have more patience than you do. They want to go, but they'll hold it until you come and pull up under that tree. And you lock your car and you walk away. You come back. It's like there's been a war there. Not a bloodshed, poo shed. Why? There's always, what if? What if they do a number two on my paint? On the paint of the car. Now it's going to burn through the paint. So there's always this suffering. But if that car's not your car, who cares? You were dropped there by a taxi driver, and the taxi driver is waiting for you to go and attend to your chores and come back. You're running an errand, right? The taxi driver is going to wait until your return. Now are you concerned about where the taxi driver parks his car? Are you concerned where he parks his car? No. As long as there's a car that is drivable, that can transport you to wherever you want to go by the time you've completed your errand, that's all that matters to you. Why? Because it's whose car? Not my car. His car. Is it not attachment that brings suffering? See, this is the what if. Dukkha dukkha. That dukkha dukkha came the moment you attached. It's not after the fact. It's not something's happened. Something hasn't happened yet. Nothing's happened yet. You're driving in traffic. Nothing's happened yet. So why do you take out insurance? Actually, answer this question. If any of you have worked in risk, right? There are 4 risk mitigation strategies. Anyone studied risk? There are 4 risk mitigation strategies. 1 is to accept. You can accept the risk. Which reminds me, it's like some people, when you talk to them about hell, at Apai, right? You could go to hell when you die. I'll worry about it when I get there. That's accepting the risk. I'll worry about it when I get there. Accept. So that's one risk mitigation strategy. There's another risk mitigation strategy. That is to reduce. You can reduce the risk by taking precautionary measures. So some people, they do merit. to reduce the risk of them going to the hells. They try and do a lot of merit, so that in the hope that at their dying moment, it's a meritorious deed that comes to their mind and not an unmeritorious one. So that's reducing. Then there's a third option, which is transfer. You can transfer your risk. That is what people use insurance companies for. To transfer the risk. And in the conversation about health, why do people take these fruit baskets and go and worship gods? Why do people go to Kataragam? To transfer the risk. Dear God, please accept my offering, and you take over the risk of me going to hell. I will please you, and you look after me. That's why you say to the insurance company, right? I will pay my premiums, and if something does happen, then please look after me. That is transferring. The best thing to do is to avoid. You can avoid the risk completely. Of course, to avoid the risk of hell, you have to become a Sotapanna. So risk mitigation strategies even work in Buddhist philosophy also. They've got it all covered. Between the four of those strategies, you've got it covered. You can either accept, you can reduce, you can transfer, or you can avoid. So this what if that I'm talking about here, this is the dukkha. People take our insurance plan so that they can transfer the what if dukkha. But it comes with a caveat. What if the insurance company doesn't pay? Have you never wondered about that? In some countries, I think in most countries, of course, an insurance business, they're a business. They're not going into insurance because they love you. They're giving out an insurance policy so that they can get a return on their investment. They're here to make a profit. So an insurance company will try and find every loophole to get out without having to pay up. You can't fault them for them. That's just the way they do business. That's the way the world works. If you don't like it, then get the hell out of here. Right? So you transfer the what if risk by taking out an insurance plan. But that what if risk only came to you the moment you signed the paperwork to say that car is now mine. The what if risk to do with your wife only came to you the moment you signed the paperwork to say she is mine. Until then, it was not your problem. Until then it was your in-laws or to-be in-laws problem. Attachment is what always brings you suffering. Give me one example to convince me that it's not attachment that brings suffering. Just one, not two, one. Give me one example of suffering where the source of it is not attachment. Anyone? Beg your pardon, sir? The Dhamma. What do you think? What if you're attached to the Dhamma? There's still suffering. That's why the Buddha says, use the Dhamma like a boat to get to the other side of samsara. Once you're there, let go of it. Because even if you're attached to the Dhamma, because even the Dhamma, as much as everything else, arises and passes away. Anything that arises and passes away, this is the nature of anicca, arising and passing away. Udavim vaivi. The Dhamma is much the same. It will arise and pass away. In another 2,500 years, we will not have the Buddha's teaching. So what if we all agree and we all strive to protect the Dhamma, to preserve the Dhamma beyond another 2,500 years? We can do everything we can, but it's just not going to happen. Because it also has an expiry date. Because if not, then there's not going to be another Buddha. For as long as the Gautama Buddha's Dhamma prevails, do you think we're going to get a Maitri Buddha? No. A Buddha cannot come into this world when the teaching of the previous Buddha still exists, still prevails. So it's when this Dhamma passes away, by passing away what I mean is, people will not know it. There will not be any Sotapannas. Certainly not in the Kama worlds. They may be in the Rupa worlds and the Arupavachara worlds, but not in the Kama worlds. There won't be any Sotapannas, Sakurdagamis, Anagamis or Arahants. There will not be any noble ones. So that even the Dhamma passes away. So if you're attached to the Dhamma, still that brings you suffering. No matter what you're attached to, if it's conditional, you will have to suffer. Why? Because when the conditions change, now the dependent effect is going to change along with it, hand in hand. This is the problem of an anicca world. So, dukkha. Why do we say yada nicchan tan dukkha? Arising and passing away, that is the nature of anicca. Udavim vaivim. Even whether we talk about the outside world or we talk about the chitta, the mind that arises and passes away, by nature it's vexatious. Pelenasulu. Right? It's by nature vexatious. What that means is, if you attach to it, then you have no choice but to vex. Vexation is the outcome of that process. What is the only output of attachment? What can you feed into a process which has attachment that you can get anything other than vexation? So there's a process, output is vexation, the process is attachment. What can you feed into this process that will give you something that is not vexation? There's a process. What's happening in the middle of that process is attachment. Right? What can you feed into this process that's going to give you something that is something other than vexation? Nothing. Anything that you feed in that is conditional is going to bring you vexation. But what about Nibbana? Nibbana or Nirvana. Is Nirvana conditional? Is it? Is it not? Is it and it's not at the same time? What is it? Nirvana is not conditional, but getting to it is. It's like if you're driving a car, you want to get from wherever you are to Colombo City, right? So as you approach Colombo City, there will be a signboard, right, that says "Welcome to Colombo" or something like that. They'll have marked from this point forward is Colombo. To get over that line, you have to do something. You've got to drive, you've got to walk, you've got to jump, hop, whatever you have to do, you've got to do it. Once you've crossed that line, to be in Colombo, do you have to do anything? You're in Colombo now. To be there, do you have to do anything? No. Someone can rub the line, the border line, and kind of draw it in front of you, and now you're not in Colombo anymore. So they've changed the border. I mean, someone could do that potentially, right? So you're standing on the right side of Colombo. Someone decides, right, no, that's not the border. We are changing the border, and now they redraw the border. But this time round, you're outside the border. You haven't changed. You haven't moved one bit. Now you're no longer in Colombo, and you have to do something again to get to Colombo. Or someone could push you back. They could come and push you across the border, and now you're back out of Colombo. Unless one of these two things can happen, to be in Colombo, you don't have to do anything. Do you understand the example I'm giving you there? To be in Colombo, you don't have to do anything. But with Nibbana, none of these two things can happen. No one can push you back out of Nirvana, and the border cannot be changed. Because it's ultimately eradication of attachment and ignorance. To what The Buddha couldn't come and say one fine day, you know what, I've changed my mind to become a Sotapanna. It's not just Sakkaya Ditti Vicikicca and Silabhata Paramasa. You also have to eradicate Kamaraga and Patigha. Does that make you a non-Sotapanna all of a sudden? No. Because, the Buddha does not come and say whatever comes to his mind. He just doesn't come and call the shots. That's not how a Buddha works. He just comes and says what is true in the world. He tells us what the reality is. He doesn't make it up on the fly. He's like the bulb that turns on in a room. He's like the light. When the light is on, does the light change the configuration of the room? Right, we walk into this room and it's lit. Now you see where everything is in the room. Switch off the light. You switch the lights back on. Now the configuration has changed. Is it the light that changed it? No. Well, surely someone else must have come into the room and changed the configuration. So the Buddha is like the light. When the light shines, you just see things as they are. That's all it is. Whether you like it or not is irrelevant. The light has nothing to do with it. The light will just help you see the way things are as it is. But if you are blind, the light can't help you. The light can't help you if you are blind. This is why the Buddha can only show you the path. You've got to travel it. We can only help you see the path. You've got to travel it. I can't hold your hand and pull you with me. Well, if the Buddha can't, well, how can I? So, let's check if your understanding of dukkha is proper. We first talked about anicca. Arising and passing away is the nature of anicca. All conditioned things arise and pass away. Is there anyone who can stop that? No. All conditioned things will arise and pass away. Why does that happen the way it does? Because it says that on the tin. What does it say on the tin? This is conditioned. What does an air conditioner do? It conditions the air. If it gets too hot, it cools it up, or it cools it down. What if it gets too cold? Then it warms it up. An air conditioner will condition and maintain the temperature of the room at that temperature. So if you set that to 25 degrees, if you bring in another air conditioner and start cooling it to say 23, that's a useless thing to do. So if you have two air conditioners in the same room, it's pointless to have it at two different settings, two different temperatures, because one's going to cool it, the other's going to warm the room. Just checking. No, because sometimes I have seen it that way. Yeah. One's a 23, the other's a 25. Pointless. Because one's going to warm it, the other's going to cool it. So what the aircon is going to do is to condition the air. It's going to condition not just the temperature but also the humidity of the room, right? So likewise, all conditioned things are in a state of flux. It constantly keeps changing because the causes that give rise to that effect are constantly changing. So if something is conditioned, then by nature it's vexatious. What that means is, if you have a tendency to attach to that condition, then be warned, you will have to suffer. Why? Because conditions change not to your liking. It will change when it changes. No one's going to come and ask you, is it okay if I change now? They're not going to ask you that. So Rupa Vedana Sanya Sankara Vijnana, they're not going to come and ask you, do you mind if I pass away now? Is it okay? Is it time? Can I pass away now? It's not going to come and ask you. And they're not going to come and ask you, do you mind if I arise now? They're not going to come and ask you. It will arise when it arises, and it's going to pass away when it passes away. But if you attach to it, now you've dug yourself a great hole. We keep putting ourselves into this problem. Thankfully, Because none of you in this room is responsible for my suffering. Whew. Isn't that great? Madam, if you were responsible for my suffering, if you were responsible for my suffering, sir, then I'd want you to come and listen to these sermons every day. I'd want you to come and listen to these sermons every day. I'd want you to meditate 24/7. Because you hold the key to my suffering. But thankfully, that's not the case. I am 100% responsible for my suffering and my happiness. I am the only one who has the key to my house of happiness, or my prison of suffering. I get to decide when I walk in and out of it, because I hold the key, and there isn't another copy of it. There's only one key, and I have it. Thankfully. You know, how do you think other people in this world find their happiness? From others, absolutely. They find their happiness by making other people suffer. How is that so? You're willing to spend money, right? This is why you earn money, so you can spend it. Where do you spend money? On entertainment, restaurants, right? Fashion, homeware, right? New car, watches, jewelry, right? Is this kind of places where you spend your money? I don't spend any money because I don't have any, right? But this is generally the places where you spend your money, right? That is an abhisankara, because first you have to earn it, then you have to spend it. They're both abhisankara. Why do you spend your money? Yes, you spend it on entertainment, but why do you spend it? Yes, because you're doing it as a means of relieving yourself from vexation. One will only relieve oneself from vexation if they have been vexed initially. So if I want you to part with your money, I have to get you to vex. I have a new mobile phone that I've just designed. Right? I have my problems. I have a family to feed. That is what makes me happy. I like going to holiday to Singapore once a year. That's what makes me happy. Right? Now, I need money to get what I need done. I'm a genius, and therefore I have invented this brand new phone that's the best smartphone that has ever been invented. Now I have to sell this to you. So I have to make you part with your hard-earned cash. You're only going to do it if you believe that this phone is going to bring you pleasure. For you to want to spend your hard-earned money to buy this phone, what must I do first? I have to make you vex. Therefore, I start giving you these views. This phone is the best phone there is. There's not a phone that's ever been invented that's as smart as this one. It's got the fastest processor. It's got the best memory. You can browse all the internet that you like. Blah, 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 blah. I give you all the features and the benefits of this phone, and now I want you to buy this. I make you want to buy this. Not I want you to buy this. I make you want to buy my phone. Therefore, you are now vexing. In order to relieve yourself of vexation, you are willing to part with your hard-earned cash. You give me money, that makes me happy. I give you the phone, that makes you happy. My plan was, I don't care whether you get the phone or not. All I want is the money. All I want is the money that's in your pocket. But what did I have to do first? Make you suffer. It's a dog-eat-dog world. And you want to hang around? Unless we are talking about unconditional happiness, there's not a way any man or woman or child in this world can be happy without making someone else suffer in order for them to be happy. Someone else has to suffer for you to be happy. Has to. That's fair, isn't it? Parents want their children to be well behaved. You tell them, Buddha, go and make your bed. No. You'll say it once, you'll say it twice. What are you going to do the third time? You're going to load your weapon, right? Try saying no again. Now he's going to comply. Now he or she is going to go and make his bed. And that's going to make you happy. He didn't make his bed because he liked to. He made his bed because he wants to be relieved of the punishment that might come his way otherwise. So, for your happiness, what did you do? You made someone else suffer. We are talking about family here. What does family do? They love each other, right? Yeah. Tell me about it. Sad. Not sad. The word is pathetic. Pathetic. For as long as what we seek is conditional happiness, someone else has to suffer. You know, the other day I was thinking about, you will all have heard of the how God invented the world. God created the world, rather, not invented, but created the world, right? As they teach in Christianity. And then He created man and woman, Adam and Eve, right? And then there was this forbidden apple tree. If I've got my facts right? There's an apple, and God said, no matter what you do, don't eat the fruit of the forbidden tree. You know, there's a real story there about drushti, vexation, abhisankara, and relief from vexation and pleasure. And I was reflecting on, because I remember those stories. When I was a very young child, the school I went to, the only religion they taught me was Christianity. It was not in Sri Lanka, it was some other country. So I learned a little bit about Christianity as a young child in my formative years. So I remembered those stories, and now I was thinking, hey, there's a connection here. Because there was a serpent, right, that came and got, or a snake or some, was it a serpent, snake, something like that? I think it was the devil taking the form of a snake or a serpent that comes to Adam, to Eve, and says, get the fruit from the forbidden tree. How does the snake convince Eve to do this? Temptation. To tempt somebody, the only way you can tempt someone is by saying that something is pleasurable. Right? God has kept true knowledge, true wisdom from you. To get that knowledge, to acquire that knowledge, you have to go and eat the fruit from that forbidden tree. And once you have acquired that knowledge, acquired that wisdom, then you'll be equal with God. Now that's a great proposal. So now, this person has been implanted with this view, this drushti, of pleasure. So now this person it starts to vex. So Eve starts to vex. Therefore goes and speaks to Adam and says, Adam, let's go get that fruit. And Adam says, no. God forbade us from plucking the apple from the forbidden tree. So we mustn't do that. But, we could be equal with God. Now that drishti starts spreading like a virus. This is now contaminating Adam's mind as well. So now Adam decides, actually, if that is so pleasurable and joyful and essence-full, because you can be like God, you can be omnipotent, you can be omniscient, you can know about everything and be all-capable. Now he starts vexing, and to relieve himself from vexation, what he does is he walks up to the tree and plucks the fruit. That is all abhisankara. And now he starts to take a bite of the apple. All abhisankara. All this because he couldn't bear the vexation that was going on in his mind. Now with that abhisankara, he is relieved of vexation and he feels pleasure. That is where everything went wrong. So true. Because the moment Adam experienced pleasure, along with pleasure came attachment. Along with pleasure came attachment. And if you read the scriptures, the Bible and so on, that is the point where God cursed all of humanity. Because he said, you did what I asked you not to do. So true. Whether you believe in God or not is irrespective here. I want you to take the essence of this story. Right? That moment where Adam and Eve experienced pleasure, what happened next was attachment. Until then there was no pleasure. At that moment they were relieved of vexation. Because, as the scriptures will say, before that there was no suffering in this world. Everyone was happy. Everyone was delightful. Everyone delighted, right? There was no suffering, there was no pain, no old age, no sickness, no illness, nothing. The world was just such a happy place. So true. I agree 100%. Except I only have a slightly different interpretation of that story. That's all. It was at that moment where he experienced pleasure, and along with pleasure came attachment. And as attachment came, now what happens? Suffering. So true. Except the Bible doesn't talk about it in that sense. Otherwise, it's the Buddha who's also written the Bible. Because there can't be attachment brings you suffering. So in the Bible they'll say it's going against the word of God that brought you suffering. Right? That's what the Bible will say. If you go against the word of God, if you don't abide by God's word, if you disobey God, then you will have to suffer. In Buddhist philosophy, if you attach, then you will have to suffer. So since then, non-Buddhists will start to try and please God. God, I'm sorry. Right? That's why they get baptized. To be cleared of the original sin. To be cleansed of the original sin. Right? That's why Christians have a habit of, or it's customary for them to be baptized. Sorry? So if you look at it from a Buddhist perspective, baptism in Buddhism would be to come to Sammaditthi. To become a Sotapanna. That is Buddhist baptism. Then you can work towards ridding yourself of the suffering that was caused by the original sin. And the original sin was, in Buddhist terms, attachment. It was attachment all throughout that brought us suffering. Then, now, and also in the future. Attachment every single time. Ignorance of how pleasure arises is what keeps us stuck in this loop of attachment. Because all we say is attachment brings happiness, attachment brings pleasure, so attach as much as you can. Attach all you like, attach as much as you can. Love thy neighbor, they said. But we know what happens if you love thy neighbor. Suffering. Be compassionate to your neighbor. Yes, But if you overstep the mark of compassion, now it goes into love. And there's no room for love in Buddhist teaching. They use the words loving kindness for compassion. I don't get that. Because karuna is not that. Love has no room in Buddhist teaching. Because love is attachment. I think last week we talked about metta, karuna, mudita, upeksha. And I reminded you, don't step the mark on either side of the spectrum. If you go further out of metta, you walk into love. If you walk further out of upeksha, you go into anger. And that's outside the spectrum of Buddhist philosophy. What we are practicing to do is really to be equanimous, or have this upeksha feeling towards all things that go on around us. Everything in the world. Be equanimous. Even when it comes to rupa, vedana, sanya, sankara, vijnana. Be equanimous. You can't do it forcefully. It has to come with your understanding of the Dhamma. But that is ultimately where we want to get to. Be equanimous about rupa, vedana, sanya, sankara, vijnana. Let it arise when it arises. Let it pass away when it passes away. I don't care. If you're someone who doesn't care when rupa, vedana, sanya, sankara, vijnana comes or goes, if it comes or goes, if it goes after it comes, or if it doesn't come at all, now you are a happy person. You're a happy man. That's the only way to be happy. Because otherwise, you are someone who's cursed with expectation. The moment you set expectation, nothing good can come your way. Why? Remember, we are not talking about suffering when something breaks. That is viparinama, yes. Right? Something breaks, suffering, yes, we all get that. But what about dukkha, dukkha? What if it's there from the moment you start attaching? The moment you start attaching. If you are a mother or a father and you have a child, can you think back and remind yourself when dukkha, dukkha came into your heart? When did dukkha, dukkha come? The minute you wanted a child. You hadn't even conceived then. The minute you decided, I want to have a child. Now, what if? What if I'm on the right diet? My husband smokes. What if? I take the odd glass of wine every now and then. What if? I'm a bit too heavy for my structure. What if? I'm a bit too far on the. I'm a bit too elderly. What if? Am I too old? We are not in the best neighborhood to be bringing up a child. What if? What school will my child go to? What if? How many what if questions? Just imagine, right? You want to have a child. Just imagine how many what if questions you'll have to come up with. Or you want to build a house. Anything, you name it. Anything you want to attach to. Just imagine how many what if questions you'll have to come up with. And you haven't even acquired it yet. So we're not talking about what if it breaks. We're not talking about what am I going to do now that it's broken. That's not what we're talking about. It hasn't even happened yet. Mentally you're already starting to create this imaginary world, this world, this fabrication world, this world that you have fabricated in your own mind. What if? How many what if questions do you live with on a daily basis? When you want to cross the road, what if? Okay. So the moment you're attached to the idea, so right, I want to have a child. The moment that idea sets in your mind, all these what if questions will come your way. It happens immediately afterwards. The moment you're attached to whatever it is, whatever notion you're attached to, you have a question paper of what ifs that come along with it. All these questions have now to be answered. We don't like answering these questions. But because we don't like to bear the vexation, you have to answer these questions. You want a child, right? You are not with child yet. You want a child. So now you start vexing. If you want to relieve yourself of this vexation, you must now be prepared to answer the what if questions. You must now be prepared to go through abhisankar. And you must also now be prepared to suffer from the viparinama when it comes. The alternative? Be patient. Bear the pelima. That's the alternative, right? Either you have to be tolerant of it. Let the pelima, let the vexation build up. But you can only do it for so long. There's no get out clause here. Yeah, or rid yourself of attachment. That's the only thing that you really can do. Rid yourself of attachment and then all problems are gone. But if you want to keep your attachment, either you have to keep vexing or you have to relieve yourself of vexation. You can only keep vexing for so long. There's going to come a day, there's going to come a time when I can no longer bear this frustration. I want a child now, I just can't wait another year. Now, young couples, when you got together, you decided, right, let's have a child. The wife says, I want a child this year. Husband says, not yet, darling, we haven't settled down yet. Let's wait a little bit longer. I'm going to get a promotion in another 6 months' time. Why don't we wait till then? We're still living with our in-laws. Why don't we wait until we move out? How many times can you keep telling her? One day she's going to say, either we're going to have a child now, or I'm going to go and find someone else who can give me a child. Either that, or the attachment to a child has to be removed. Then, problem solved. That's the only real solution to any problem. Otherwise, every solution to a problem is another problem. Remember I told you about the air cons? Before we had the air cons, what was the problem we had? It was too hot in here. So then we got these air conditioners fixed. Well, you think it's not a problem now? Who's got to service these things? Who's got to look after these things now? One problem solved, but that was the start of another problem. When one door is closed, another door is opened. People talk about in terms of opportunities. Oh, don't worry, a door closed is another door open. That is the problem. One door closed, another door is opened. We are talking about vexation here. One problem finished, starts another problem. They wanted a child, so they went and had a child. Now, wanting a child door, closed. That problem is gone. But new door has opened. And this door is, I now have a child. Now we've got to look after it. Now we've got to feed it, send it to a good school. Right? Yes? Yes. Have we got to protect the child? Make sure he or she doesn't go and spend time with the bad kind of people. All these problems come with the package. It's part and parcel. This is why abhisankhara always puts you back worse off than you started. That is why sabbe sankhara anicchati. That's why Tathagata Vamsa says, the Lord Buddha says, Katamasa Ananda. Sabba Sankaresu Anicca Sanya. Ananda, what is this anicca contemplation of sankara? Sabba Sankaresu attiyati, harayati, jigucchati, ayang uchata ananda, sabba sankaresu anicca sanya. All types of sankara. So here he talks about sabba sankara. You can interpret sabba in two ways. One is all types of sankara. Sabba means universal. Or the other interpretation would that be swa abba. Swa is the self. Abba is elbagana, or to promote and propagate and foster the self. Preservation of the self. All sankara you do to preserve the self. In other words, for the purpose of pleasure. All sankara that you conduct for the purpose of pleasure is attiyati, harayati, jigucchati. What is attiyati? It's like giving the dog a bone. A bone which has no flesh. What is the problem with giving a dog a bone that has no flesh? Why does it make the dog angry? There are two problems here, right? One, he's hungry. The more he keeps chewing on this bone, the more he's going to be feeling hunger. Right? So the problem gets worse. Not just in one way, but there's an even worse way, and that is every time he bites at this bone, it's going to start bleeding. His jaws and the insides of his mouth, of the dog's mouth, is going to start to be injured, and it's going to start bleeding. There's going to be wounds all over the mouth, and now they're all going to start bleeding. This dog is going to taste its own blood. And when this dog tastes its own blood, it's got to think, I've just found food. I can now taste the flesh. So what is he going to do? He's going to keep chewing on this bone. The more he keeps chewing, the more it's going to hurt the insides of his mouth. The more it's going to wound the inside of his mouth, and more blood is going to start seeping outside. And he's going to be swallowing his own blood. Sabba sankaresu attiyati. You know, the Buddha is talking about you. What he's saying is, every time you did a sankara to relieve yourself of vexation was like giving this dog a bone. So what he's saying is, at the end of that, you were worse off than you started. You were feeding on your own blood. You were killing yourself from the inside. There was the pretense of pleasure. It looked like it was pleasure because you could taste pleasure. You could taste the blood. But little did you know, it was your own blood that you were tasting. So really, you're feasting on your own suffering. The thought of it? He's talking about you. He's talking about all the things you did in your life for the purpose of pleasure. Okay, name one thing you didn't do in your life for the purpose of pleasure. Okay, one thing that is not attiyati in your life. Come on. Okay, I'll give a list. You tell me when to stop, right? Having kids. Getting married. Going abroad. Studying. Qualifications. Building a big house. Buying a car. Come on, don't waste my time. Tell me when to stop. Getting the latest haircut. Have you found it yet? Weren't they all for the purposes of pleasure? Each and every one of them? Why do you make yourself a cup of tea in the morning? Is it simply because you're feeling thirsty? You could simply drink water. When you have food at home, why do you still pick up the phone and dial Pizza Hut? You can't tell me that's because you're just hungry. Oh, there's food in the fridge. What is it about pizza that can feed your hunger more so than rice and curry that's in the fridge? It's the same thing, food. Ultimately, you just have carbohydrates, proteins, vitamins, minerals, right? Lipids. What else does pizza have? Anything other than that? Cholesterol. And your LDLs and VLDLs. Are you not worse off? Oh, and less money in your bank account. Are you not worse off? So is that not attiyati? Are you not feasting on your own suffering? Marriage. Let's not talk about that. We don't need to state the obvious, right? I talk about my life experiences, so, it has to relate to you as well, because we both have lived in the same world, haven't we? Why did we get married? Companionship, right? Because we couldn't tolerate the boredom. Because we wanted someone to be by our side when we were sick. We wanted someone to grow old with, right? And we wanted someone to go into our next birth with at the end of this life. Sari yatiyen api yane natura sansare api ekata yamu. What a joke. Seriously. People buy this stuff. And you what? Better off? Don't answer that question. Some of you have your spouses here with you. But hey, if you can be honest to yourself, and you both can be honest to yourself, if you have an understanding of the Dhamma, right, there's no kidding you, right? There's no doubt there. Every time we did an abhisankara, ended up worse off. The reason that we entertained that abhisankara was because we couldn't bear the vexation that came before. A young child grows up with his friends, family, feeding this child, right, Puta? When you grow up, you have to have a beautiful wife, right? She's going to make you very happy. Ami told you that? Right? So children grow up with these views. Now they read these novels and watch cartoons where everything ends happily and they live happily. Yeah, ever after. All completely distorted views being planted into this child's mind. This child is being brainwashed. Whatever truth he could see in the world is being distorted. Complete lies being fed into this child's mind. This is why I always urge parents, make sure your children receive the gift of Dhamma. You tied the knot because you bought all that crap. You signed up for all that. Therefore, you tied the knot, now there's no turning back. It was too late when you realized. Your children are growing up in the same, or it's not the same world, it's worse. It's worse than it used to be. Completely being bombarded with all this nonsense that pleasure is out there, pleasure's in the outside world. Go seek it, go find it. The world's your oyster, they say. See how much mithya drishti there is? The world's your oyster. Good Lord. For a young child, someone who's growing up, picking up these views, And some children, on their bedroom walls, they have a picture of a doctor, an engineer, scientist. This is me when I grow up. I want to be a doctor when I grow up. I want to be an engineer when I grow up. Whose fault? Whose fault? Parents. I'm not saying take out the picture of the doctor. Let them keep it. But alongside that, why don't they put up a picture of the great elder Sariputta? Or the great elder Moggallana? At least of the Buddha. Most young children don't even know who the Buddha is. Well, let alone children, adults. Most people, when we talk about the Buddha, they're thinking of the physique of Prince Siddhartha, because they think it's the body of the Buddha. All they're talking about is Siddhartha, a royal prince, or an ascetic later on. But that's not the Buddha. The question is not who is the Buddha. The question is what is the Buddha. It's not who. The Buddha was a man who lived and died. So when you learn that, everyone goes, well, yeah, much the same as everyone else I know. What makes him so special? That's because they don't know what the Buddha is. They don't realize the understanding behind that. Whose fault? Are you ashamed to answer? I'm not necessarily talking to you sat in front of me. There are a lot of people listening to these sermons online. I want parents to think, at least, here you have the acquaintance. You get to meet monks and other people, right? People who are of similar beliefs and hold on to similar social values. But when you are outside this safe zone, children are completely being bombarded with falsehood. Growing up believing that pleasure is out there in the outside world. All I have to do is just waiting for me to come and grab it. Money is what I need, so I will earn as much money as I need to earn myself all the pleasure that is just waiting for me to come and grab it. You must act, parents. Listening to all this is all good and well, but if you don't act, people say knowledge is power. I don't believe that. Knowledge put into action is power. If you don't act on the knowledge that you have acquired, what's the point? If you have learned something, if you have gained something, then put that into action. Save your children. I know the society I grew up in and the cultures that I was exposed to. I know how difficult it was for me to save myself because my parents weren't knowledgeable enough to teach me the Dhamma. They knew lots of other things about science and math and technology and things like that, but they didn't know enough Dhamma to save me. But the Dhamma is the only thing that can save you. So I had to find this myself. Looking back then, if I hadn't found the Dhamma, I don't even want to imagine what my life would have been like. Complete waste of time. Because sabba sankaresu attiyati. All sankara, for the purpose of pleasure, is like a dog chewing on a meatless bone. Remember, it's not just the fact that the dog's hunger is not going to be sated. That's not the only problem here. Every time this dog chews on that bone, it's going to hurt the inside of his mouth. And every time that happens, every time these bones prick the inside of this animal's mouth, it's going to start bleeding. This dumb dog is going to think that I have just found flesh. And the more it feels that, the more it experiences that, the more it's going to keep crunching on that bone. And with every crunch, it's feasting on its own suffering. What a pity. Where's the escape from this? That dog could continue doing that until its death. Don't you think so? It's just going to keep chewing on the bone. After one bone, another bone gets thrown its way. Now it starts chewing on that bone, because with every bone it chews, it's getting blood. But it doesn't realize it's its own blood. The more it chews, the more it's going to keep digging at its oral cavity, and soon enough it's going to start infesting, and now the animal's going to die. Did it not bring death upon itself? That is why he said attiyati, harayati. Shameful. Remember we talked about baby Natasha a long while ago? Few of you will remember, those who were there right from the start. Baby Natasha, this mad woman who's got a child, or who thinks she's got the child, and she's feeding this baby. Whenever she goes on holiday, what does she do? She poses for pictures, and she gets a passerby. Hey, please, can you take a picture of me and my child? So what is she holding in her hands? What is she holding in her hands? Nothing. Why? Because she thinks she's got a child, but there's no child. That was baby Natasha. The child she never had. The child she never had. So these pictures, they went into a photo album, remember? Of her feeding the child, washing the child, clothing the child, taking the child on walks. Right? She got pictures of them and put into a photo album. Friends used to come around, and then what did she used to do? Show them the photo albums. Hey, see, me and my baby. And people asking, what baby? My baby, don't you see? So obviously it clicked. Okay, she's just gone cuckoo. So, oh yeah, I see. She's cute. People used to say. Eventually this woman's illness was cured. Eventually she got her medication, she got treatment, and her mental illness was cured. Then she opened the photo album. What am I doing in that picture? Why am I holding my arms in a funny way? Do you think she's going to be showing her photo albums again to friends that come around? Why? Because she is ashamed. She's ashamed of all the things that she used to do, thinking that she had a child. All that abhisankara that she did was for a baby that never existed. All the abhisankara that you do is for pleasure that never existed. Her baby Natasha is your pleasure world. It's a dream. Not a dream come true. A dream that never comes true. You know the really sad thing about karma? I prefer to use the word karma instead of sensuality, because karma has a much deep and profound meaning within it. Ama, kadamim, in that sense. That which hinders nirvana. The really sad thing about karma is that for something that is unreal, for pleasure that is made up, suffering is very real. Think about it. For pleasure that is made up, suffering is very real. We all live in a karma world. The reason that we have these bodies is because we have been born into the karma worlds, yes? What did these bodies bring you ever since you got them? Suffering. Is there any part of your body that brought you pleasure? No, because pleasure can only be brought from relief from vexation. Remember the two processes. They are not one and the same. The process that brings you pleasure can only be fed with, what's the only input? Vexation. Vexation is the only input to that process. The output is pleasure. But it will only accept vexation. There's no part of your body that ever brought you pleasure. There may be parts of your body which are highly sensitive to touch. So therefore, when you touch that part of the body, you experience pleasure. Yes, I understand that. But that is because there's an infinite amount of vexation at that point in your body. Because generally, these are spots where there are many hundreds of thousands of nerve endings. Each nerve ending suffering constantly. So bring them all together, all those nerve endings together. Now you rub that spot, trigger it, some kind of stimulus, and all that vexation is relieved. That is how you experience physical pleasure, as much as mental pleasure. Any kind of pleasure is relieved from vexation. So apply this into your own lives. I can't give you examples, so that you have to do for yourself. Any kind of pleasure is relieved from vexation. Why did we ask for these bodies? Why were we born with this? Why were we gifted with these bodies? As if it were a gift. Because we wanted what? Karma. Because we wanted pleasure, right? Because in the karma worlds, pleasure is generally or primarily sought through smell, taste and touch. In the rupa worlds, it's sound and sight. Generally speaking, that's where they seek pleasure from, sight and sound. Whereas in the karma worlds, it's touch or smell, taste and touch. For smell, taste and touch to happen, two objects must collide. So there has to be these two objects in the first place. Take smell for instance. Your nose, there are sensors in your nose which are able to pick up chemicals in the air. So these chemicals, these molecules, they have complementary shapes. These are nose cells, the olfactory nerves, they have complementary shapes. So what happens is, whatever molecules there are in the air, they collide with these nerve endings. So there's a collision there. So two physical things have to touch. Take taste as another example. Your taste buds and the taste that's in the food, they have to touch. So physical contact has to happen. And touch, goes without saying. Two physical objects have to touch, have to collide. Therefore, you need a physical body, a solid body. Whereas in the rupa worlds, there is no need for that. Because light and sound are both energies. Light and sound are energies, whereas smell, taste and touch, they're not energies. Smell, taste and touch are physical things. They can only be sensed where there's physical contact. But both light and sound can be sensed through energies. Therefore, when you go into the rupa worlds, you don't need a hard, solid body like this, because there's no need for touch or contact, physical contact to happen. But because we wanted to enjoy karma or pleasure through sight, smell and touch, we were not gifted but cursed with this body. There's no part of this body that brings us pleasure, but it brings us ample amounts of suffering. Because pleasure is nothing other than relief from vexation. Pleasure is simply something you fabricate in your own mind. It's a mental creation. It's like a fantasy land that you build in your own mind. It's like, you have to imagine pleasure. Really, that's what happens. You imagine it. It's an imagination. It's a fantasy. It's a fiction. I'm throwing all the words that I can think of. It's made up. It's not real. But for made up pleasure, what about the pain? Oh, that's very real. Don't you think that's unfair? This would be okay. If the pleasure was real, I'm okay to get the pain because it's, that's acceptable. Fair dues, right? Pleasure is real, the pain is equally real. Okay, I get that. Pleasure is real, pain is not real. Oh, now I'd love that. But actually, we've got the short end of the stick. This is the worst case, where the pleasure is fake, but the pain is very real. So real, it's surreal. Pardon the pun. We signed up for this. Guy breaks into your home, is a burglar. Rummaging around your bedroom, living room, picking up everything, all things of value. There are two ways to solve this problem. One, go and deal with it. Two, go to sleep. Close your eyes, dream. In your dream world, are you being burgled? No. In your dream world, you are living the best life you can imagine. But does that stop the burglary from taking place? No. This is why karma is such a curse. Because while you are living this fantasy world in your mind, that you've created in your mind, life that you have, human life that you have, with which the only blessing that you have to actually fix the real problem is passing you by. How many times have you been on the phone with a loved one? Right? Think back to when you were dating somebody. Right? You're on the phone, talking to your loved one, on the phone. How many hours could you while away on the phone, not even knowing that time's passed by? About 5 minutes? I'm ashamed to say some days I used to fall asleep on the phone. My dad used to come and wake me up and say, Puta, you're still on the phone. Yikes. Caught. And you switch off the phone, and then who has to pay the bills? See, the bills are very real. The bills are very real. You have to pay real money, laboring real hours, carrying real weights, doing real stuff. But the world that you've created, that's all fake. That's all imaginary. Because actually, the person on the other end of the line, you haven't got a clue who that person might be. It could be a man who's speaking in a woman's voice. Or it could be a woman speaking in a man's voice. Whatever floats your boat. Made up. This is karma. When you're eating a piece of cake, or you're watching a movie, have you never been sat in front of the television and when you get up to go and you're reminded, oh actually no, I've got some work to do. You look at the clock. Several hours have passed by and you didn't even realize. Has there never been that occasion where you look at the clock and go, what time is it? I've been sat watching this television for this long? Sometimes when you're on the internet, just browsing the web, how many hours have passed by, not even knowing? Sometimes you haven't achieved anything, you've just been browsing the net. What kind of websites, I don't need to tell you. You know. But this is what I'm saying. This is all karma. You create that mental world in your mind, and then time passes you by, taking you closer to your expiry date. With every hour, takes you closer to your expiry date. Anyone here without an expiry date? It's about time. Some? Like whom? Like me. Not talking about you. Like me. I'm surprised I'm still alive. The kind of things I must have done in samsara, I'm surprised I'm still alive. I'm not surprised that I'm not going to be surprised to be dead. I'm surprised that I'm still alive. You know, when we all became humans, we drew a large chunk of the balance that we had in our merit accounts. Don't forget that ever. There's probably nothing left in there now. You drew a large balance of the merits you had in your merit account. Probably nothing left in there now. Now you're spending that merit. Do you realize that the time you spend here is costing you more than the time you spend at home? The time you spend here is costing you more than the time you spend at home doing other things. Let me explain. Which of these two things do you think you need more merit to achieve? Being at home, watching TV, sitting here, listening to this sermon. Which one needs more merit? Listen to this sermon. So while you're here, you're spending more of your merit. So if you want to stop spending your merit, plug your ears. And then I'm saving you merit. Why? Because every word you hear me say is costing you. So, what do I have to do to save you merit? It's not the being here that is costing you merit. It's listening, it's contemplating each of these words that is being said. This is why I don't like you falling asleep in sermons. This is why it hurts me when I see you falling asleep in sermons. Whether it's here or in Guru Swami Nuhanse's sermons or whatever, or even in the meditation programs. Because it's costing you huge amounts of merit to be here. It's a massive investment you're making. I want you to get the best out of making that investment. I want you to get a return out of it. To be born human, we drew a massive chunk of the merits that we had earned throughout samsara. That's why the Buddha says, to be born human again is like that turtle surfacing, and so this turtle is blind in one eye, remember? Looking up at the sky. Through what? Through the yoke. Right? 2 parts of this yoke that was thrown away by the farmer because it had reached the end of its lifetime. These 2 parts of the yoke that was floating in the ocean, they meet by coincidence in the middle of the ocean, come together so that the whole is now one again. And now he looks up at the sky with this eye that is still working, and he sees the sky. It has to be aligned. It has to be a clear sky. And if a crow flies above it at that moment, no sky. What if it's a cloudy night? No sky. What if it's raining heavily? No sky. And that only happens once every century. Once every century. I think I explained to you that metaphor in great detail in one of the sermons. We're talking about 2 parts of a yoke, of this piece of wood that's been thrown into the ocean at random. And these two have to come together at just exactly the right moment when this tortoise surfaces, when this turtle surfaces, and is looking through the hole. What if these two bits don't align? By a few millimeters they're off. Now, you're not going to be able to see the sky. Because it's not just about seeing the sky. The sky has to be seen through the hole for this probability to be that which the Buddha said. It has to be through the hole. That only manifests when these two bits come together in exactly the right shape. What if it's a bit like that? That's only a few millimeters, a few centimeters. What if there's a wave in the ocean? What happens then? They're washed away again. And what's Newton's third law of law of motion? Every force has an equal and opposite reaction. So what happens when these two things collide? The moment these two collide, they're going to push each other away. So this is going to be like this for a fraction of a second. That has to be exactly the right time when this turtle has surfaced and its good eye is looking through the hole. At exactly that time. What if the turtle's due to surface at 11:59 on Sunday, the 3rd of February 2019, 11:59 and 23 seconds and 15 milliseconds. These two come together at 23 seconds and 16 milliseconds. No use. A few milliseconds off, and this probability is not going to come forth. That's how rare it was. That is how difficult it was to have been born human. That's how much merit is required for that event to happen. The Buddha says, that will happen. You being born human is even more rare. Oh, it sends a shiver down my spine. Now just think about how much of that human life have you spent by now? Doing things that were attiyati, harayati, jigucchati. Jigucchati. Ji-gu. What's ji-gu? You know what gu is, right? Ji-gu is malamutra. So it's urine, feces, that kind of idea. Ji-gu ichchati. Ichcha? Liking. How much do you like G and Gu? It's not like Tom and Jerry. They're not two characters from some cartoon, okay? G and Gu. Ji Gu ichchati. This is how you should see Sabba Sankhara. As being something completely useless, like the stuff that you excrete from your body. Excreta. Pointless, meaningless, useless, essenceless. Nothing to be gained, nothing to be had. Like the cud, thrown away, discarded. No point, no use, zero meaning. That is how he said, look at all sankhara that had been done for the purpose of pleasure. Now you tell me then, all your life, what have we been doing? Sankhara? Yes or no? Beg your pardon? Yeah. At least now we are beginning to realize that this sankhara is meaningless. Because until such time that you understood the Dhamma, our belief was, yes, this sankhara is the best thing to be doing. That is the purpose of our life, to be doing as much sankhara as we possibly can, for the purpose of pleasure. Even an arahant does sankhara. Like going on alms, that is also sankhara. Preaching the Dhamma, that's also sankhara. But that's not sankhara for the purpose of pleasure. The Buddha talks about sankhara for the purpose of pleasure. Attiyati harayati jigucchati. meaningless, essenceless, but that's not the only problem. The more you do it, the more you keep dragging yourself into a black hole, into misery. The more you keep destroying yourself. So how does that relate to day-to-day life? What lesson do we have to take from this then? Contemplate. Whenever you feel like doing something, a sankhara, to relieve yourself from vexation, take a moment to reflect on it. Realize and acknowledge that this is pointless. Me doing this is like taking the wrong exit. It's only going to take me back to the start of this traffic queue. What is the point? I might as well have just stayed where I was before. I'm worse off than I started. Better off? Equal or worse off? Worse off. At least if you were equal, then that would have been okay. But not equal. Actually, worse off. Worse off than you had started. For the purpose of pleasure. I'm not saying now don't go cook a meal because you're feeling hungry. Because that is also sankhara, yes. And that is also for the purpose of pleasure, physical pleasure. Not talking about that. Here we are talking about for the purpose of mental pleasure. Remember, the Buddha only allowed his monks to partake in 4 things, the 4 requisites. Robes, meals, or food, medicine, and shelter. Because these are 4 things that are required because we've been born into a karma world. I have a physical body, a body that is always suffering. So I need protection from the elements. Therefore I need a robe, I need shelter. I feel hunger, therefore I need food. And I fall sick, therefore I need medicine. These 4 things, partake in them for as long as you need it. But for everything else, the answer is only the Dhamma. This is why we don't have a television at the monastery. What is the point of watching TV? Does that feed my hunger? Does that clothe me? Give me shelter? Or give me medicine when I'm sick? Okay, you have a TV, you watch news. To protect yourself, reasonable. If there's something going on out there, you need to know to stay indoors. If there's a hurricane or some kind of natural disaster, don't step out, stay indoors, right? For that it's okay, because that you're not doing for mental pleasure. But some people watch news for mental pleasure. Why? A bit of gossip, a bit of juicy gossip, right? Tabloids are full of them, aren't they? Some people buy the newspaper like they buy the morning coffee. It's what keeps them going. Gossip. Find out what the next door guy is doing. What's going on in the other world, in the other countries. Why? Is that going to feed them? Give them shelter? Medicine? Mental pleasure. Why? Constantly vexing. To relieve themselves from vexation, they partake in these behaviors and habits. And that is what the Buddha says is attiyati harayati jigucchati. Pointless. Don't do it because you're worse off than you started. But it's going to be difficult. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. Right? If you've got a meal at home, so one might ask, well, I've got a meal at home, something in the fridge. Are you suggesting then, Swami Wahanse, that I shouldn't be ringing up Pizza Hut anymore? Yes, don't ring up Pizza Hut, ring up Domino's. Have they sent the check yet? You'll still feel the urge. You could, what I'm going to suggest is do it if you want to, but reflect on it. Reflect on the meaningless nature of what you're doing, because it's attiyati harayati jigucchati. You're worse off than you started, not better off. Always worse off. Always. There's no exception. What you're doing is attiyati. It's like throwing the dog a meatless bone. The dog's going to keep chewing on it. That's going to tire the animal, and it's going to be feasting on its own blood. In the example of ordering yourself a pizza, how is that chewing on your own blood? Yeah. You're having this pizza for the purpose of mental relief from vexation. But taste never brings you relief from vexation. Taste never brings you pleasure. Because pleasure is not an attribute of taste. Pleasure can only be achieved by relieving from vexation. It's not the pizza that does that. You were attached to that taste to begin with. Then you went looking for it. Now you found it. Therefore you have stopped looking for it. Therefore you are relieved of vexation. It's not the taste that brought you that. So what was the point of then spending your money to buy the pizza? What was the point? It did nothing to put out the fire. Nothing. It did nothing to put out the fire. That's why it's pointless. Attiyati. Harayati. When you take a step back and you reflect on this and you realize the true nature of what's going on, it's like child play. When you were a young child, did you not use a stethoscope? Keep it on your mother's chest. Okay, Ami, let me listen to your heartbeat. This is a toy. It's plastic. It's not going to do anything. It was child play. When I was a young boy, I had a Superman figure. I used to fly it around the house. That was child play. I've still got that. I do it when all the other monks have fallen asleep at the monastery. Are you ready to accept me say that? Why are you laughing when I say that? Because it's shameful. It's child play. But if you see a young boy doing that, a young child doing that, would you laugh at them? No. Because it's okay, it's acceptable for a little child to play with a toy. But it's not acceptable for an adult to play with it because you know it's just a fantasy world that this child is living in. If I were to tell you that every 25th December I wait for Santa to bring me a present, I wait for the reindeers flying in, see, even they are laughing. Even the kids are laughing at me. Harayati, yes or no? Yes, so why you laugh? It's a laugh of shame. That's what it is. It's a laugh of shame. Because you know that it's a fake. It's fake. I've just made it up in my own mind and I'm living a mental world. A mental imagination. It's a fabrication. It's a fantasy I'm living in my own fantasy world. Therefore you're laughing at me. That's why harayati. So therefore jigucchati. So what is the point? Let go of it, discard of it. Meaningless, essenceless. Like you would discard your own excreta in the morning and you don't look back. Do you check before you flush? Have you got any regrets when you flush? Oh, that's a part of me. Shucks. No, you just flush. Why? Because good riddance. Isn't that what you think to yourself? Good riddance. That's what jigucchati is. Good riddance. In simple terms, good riddance. Be glad to stop doing that, because it's meaningless, essenceless, pointless, useless, futile. Attiyati, harayati, jigucchati. All of sankhara is like that. The sad part is, until we understood this reality, we spent 20, 30, 40, okay, stop me when I have hit the right point, right? 60, 70, 80 years of our lives doing things that were meaningless, essenceless, useless, futile. All of them were like throwing the dog a bone. We devoured our own suffering. We feasted on our own suffering. We tasted our own suffering and said, delicious. That makes us savages. Contemplate. It's better off to actually bear the vexation than actually engage in activities to relieve yourself from it. Pelima is better than abhisankara. You've heard the hina daham, madhyama daham, pranita daham? Hina daham, abhisankara. Madhyama daham, vexation and pelima. Pranita daham, do what you need to do to rid yourself of pelima. Remove attachment. Therefore there's no longer vexation. For as long as you are trying to do what you need to do to rid yourself of attachment, you're better off to bear and tolerate the pelima, the vexation, than actually doing abhisankara to relieve yourself of mental vexation. I'm not talking about physical vexation. Let me re-emphasize that. Okay, I'm not talking about physical pain. You need a home. You need shelter. You need clothes. You need me to say this? Like you wouldn't be doing it if I don't say it. You need a home, okay? You need food. Don't starve yourself. You're thinking, what are you talking about, Swaminatha? On the way here we stopped at Pizza Hut. Attiyati harayati jigucchati. Life. Our lives summed up. Because that's what we did. Right from the start, all the way until the moment you become an arahant. Attach, vex, abhisankara to relieve from vexation. And then, pleasure, the rupa vedana sanya sankara vijnana passes away. And with the passing away, back to vexation. But leaves attachment behind. And then, again abhisankara for the purpose of pleasure, and then passes away, and then back to vexation, and then again abhisankara, pleasure, attach, pass away, vex, copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste. We can put all that in a do-while loop. For those programmers out there. That's what we've been doing. Meaningless, pointless, useless, essenceless. The only real purpose of life is the time you spend towards Nibbana. Everything else is meaningless. The Devas, same problem. Brahmas, same problem. Hells, well, no point even talking about it. No matter where you go in this entire universe, you'll still be riddled with this curse of samsara. There's only one way out. Only one way out. There's only one exit. Don't fall for traps. There's only one exit. Attachment is the cause of all suffering. The only way to cease suffering is to cease attachment. And the only way to cease attachment is to follow the path that takes you to the cessation of suffering. Cessation of attachment. And that is the Noble Eightfold Path. To travel the Noble Eightfold Path, first you have to become a Sotapanna. Because it's at Samma Ditti, you enter the path. You enter the path at Samma Ditti. Samma Ditti can only be achieved through listening to a sermon. It doesn't have to be a formal sermon like this. As long as you are listening to something to do with the Dhamma, from a noble one, an Arya, you will be able to become a Sotapanna. Once you become a Sotapanna, then Samma Sankappa, Samma Vacha, Samma Vayama, Samma Sati, Samma Samadhi, these other factors of the Noble Eightfold Path, other steps will fulfill on their own. All you've got to do is reflect on Anicca Dukkha Anatta, like you suggested at the beginning. Try as much as you can to do it in day-to-day activities. If you, let's say someone at home, they like watching TV. They want you to watch TV with them, right? People are like that, don't they? They don't like to do it alone. They want a companion. Can you please sit down with me? Let's watch some TV. Yeah, if you want to watch, you watch. You're not watching with my eyes. No, that doesn't cut it. You want a companion. That's domanasa. Domanasa. You need another mind to always be with you, another being to always be with you, companionship. Otherwise you feel alone. So you want someone else to share in your joy or to share in your misery. To share in the misery. So you need someone else to always be with you. Only an arahant can actually ever live by themselves, at least an anagami. Until then, you're always looking for companionship. Even if it's someone to look out the window and see people coming and going. Otherwise, you feel boredom is a real killer for people. Think about the Western world, right? People so talk about independence. They're all about it, aren't they? Let's mind our own business, right? We don't poke our fingers in other people's affairs. Mind our own business. But what happens when people grow old? Yeah, they get left alone. No one to care for them, no one to talk to them. And then they become so destitute and they start becoming depressed. And then they start looking for companionship. Someone has to come and be by their side, talk to them. I used to work in a care home. Much of the time I spent at the care home was actually going and talking to the elderly people, to the residents there, rather than attending to their needs. Just sitting down, talking to them. Asking them about how their life was, how their day was. When I know exactly how their day was because I was there. Their day was wake up, watch TV, someone comes and washes them, cleans them, feeds them, then back on the bed, watch TV, then sleep, then wake up, watch TV, someone comes and cleans them, washes them, feeds them, back in bed, wake up, watch TV. So I know exactly how their day was. But still, they want someone to talk to. You'll start to experience this with some of your parents, if they are reaching that age by now. Especially if they have become a widow. If it's either just your mother or your father, have you not heard of stories a lot of the time where one of the partners pass away, the other follows in quick succession. If the husband dies, the wife dies very, very soon. If the wife goes, the husband goes very soon. Why? What have they started to lack? Companionship. The real answer is the Dhamma. That's the real answer. The Dhamma. And we are all going there. Don't forget. Each and every one of us. Today, because you're young, because you have knowledge, because you have power, because you have authority, you will be surrounded by people. Why? Because they want you to scratch their back. Not because they love you. Don't forget, love is simply a made-up thing. It's only because they want you to scratch their back, and for as long as you do that, they'll scratch your back. But one day, you're going to be all by yourself. When you can't fend for yourself, when you can't look after yourself, the physical aspect of it is one. I get that. There's nothing you can do about it. That's just sad because you came into the karma world. What can you do? But when all your faculties stop working, you can't get out of bed, you can't feed yourself, you can't even go to the toilet. If you haven't taken the Dhamma, you will start suffering mentally. Now that's the killer. The killer is not the physical inabilities. Your physical incapacitation is not the problem. It's the mental inability. You will be looking for companionship, but you have nothing to offer. Therefore, no one's going to come to you. You're old, you're frail, you're not funny like you used to be, except for when you fart. Your grandchildren will not want to spend time with you as much as you will want to spend time with them. If what I'm saying is not true, then please tell me so. Your children will not want to spend time with you because they have other things to worry about. They have their own problems to worry about. You will be put on a bed with a television in front of you. Tati, here's a remote. I've got you the latest channels. You have 75 channels you can flick using your television. Watch all the TV you want, and I'll pay the bill. Don't worry. Right? Or here's an internet connection as well, so you can browse all the net you like. That's not what they want. They've been alive for 90 years. Sensuality never brought them any real happiness. What, you think now it's going to? How many hours of TV do you think they watched in their 90 years of life? If they were happy by now, they wouldn't be asking for your companionship. You may feed them, you may clothe them, you may clean after them and give them shelter. But that's not what they're looking for. They're looking for your companionship. You may or may not be able to offer it to them because you have other things you need to do. You have your own vexations to look after, right? Your own vexations to look about, to worry about. You have to go to work. So, what can you do? You have to. You have your own children to look after. So, you can't be by your parents all day, night and long. This is why I say, give them the Dhamma. When my parents come around, I always talk to them about this. I say, Appachi, you're going to be alone one day. Already he says, I can't be without Amma. I say, one day you're going to have to. Why aren't you preparing yourself for the inevitable? If you know a storm's coming, what do? Pretend that it's not? You have to prepare yourself for it. If brick and mortar won't cut it, then you need iron cladding to keep yourself safe. If it's a bunker you need under the ground, then that's what you need to keep yourself safe. Because the storm's coming for each and every one of you. Because there's going to be the day you don't have the Rupa, Shabda, Gandha, Rasa, Sparsha, sight, sound, smell, taste and touch the other person is looking for. Therefore, you are not worth the investment. That's when you become the road. You become dirt, dust, to be discarded. If you don't have the Dhamma by your side when this day comes, I tell you now, you will be so sorry for yourself. You will be so sorry for yourself. If you have the Dhamma, you will not need any companionship. If you don't have the Dhamma, start working towards it now. If you don't believe in samsara, if you don't believe in rebirth, well, forget all that. I'm not talking about the next birth. I'm talking about your last few years in this life is going to be hell on earth. It's going to be hell on earth if you haven't got yourself protection. The Dhamma is the only protection that can give you the protection that you need. Nothing else. Just look at your grandparents. Just because I say so. Go and look at your grandparents. If they're no longer with you, think back about how they spent their last few years. What a sad death Archie had. What a sad death Sia had. In his last few years, nobody wanted to go and tend to him. Nobody wanted to go and spend time with him. He was just on his bed, crying, weeping. Help! Someone help! I need the toilet. Help! Let him be. Why you think people don't do like that? That stuff they show on the television, on the teledramas, that's real. Let him be. He doesn't need the toilet. I mean, he's gone 5 minutes ago, he went to the toilet. He doesn't need it now. We'll do it later. Sometimes, oh help, I need the toilet. Number 1 or number 2? Number 1. I will wait until you need number 2 also. We'll wait until it's a 3. 1 plus 2, 3. It's no joke, folks. It's coming. It's coming to you. This is the inevitable. This is the sad, pathetic inevitable. And it's coming to you. I have only one question to ask. Why did you come into this karma world? Brahmas don't have this problem. Because now it's your body that's weak. Why did you ask for this body? Remember, for a fake pleasure, the pain is so real. So real. In what sense do you mean, madam? All right. Yes, that's also fabricated. Yeah. Because, remember, if there's no attachment, then there's no vexation, which is the psychological pain that you refer to there. The mental frustration, the mental agitation, vexation, all that, right? If there wasn't any attachment, you wouldn't have any of that. And if there was no attachment, there wouldn't be any suffering, any vexation. And if there was no vexation, then you would not need to relieve yourself from that vexation. Then there would not be any pleasure. Both pleasure and vexation manifest because of attachment. Attachment brings you suffering. Relief from that suffering brings you pleasure. So if you look back at the root of all of that, it's attachment. So an arahant who has ridden themselves of attachment for good no longer suffers. Because there's no suffering, there's no pleasure. But that pleasure is nothing other than relief from suffering. Is it better to not have a headache at all or to have a headache and have it cured? Which one's better? Not have it at all. So if you were to complain, hey, that's not fair. I like the feeling when I have a headache and then it gets cured. I like that feeling. Well, first you need the headache then. So, do any of you have a headache? If you don't, then you should try that feeling. Or when a headache gets better. So before you go, bang your head on the wall. By the time you get home, you will feel better and you will be able to experience what I'm talking about. Pleasure. So it's a fabrication. Suffering is also a fabrication. Thankfully, if mental suffering was real, then what is the point of becoming an arahat? Right? If mental suffering was real, what is the point of becoming an arahat? An arahat in Mahansa is someone who has eradicated all what suffering? Mental suffering. But for as long as he has a human body, depending on what karma he's done, that will bring vipaka. And that could be pleasurable or unpleasurable. So for example, if he's hungry, receiving food relieves him from physical suffering. That's the result of a good karma. Experiencing hunger, now he can't find any food. That's the result of bad karma. But either way, mentally, doesn't bother him one bit. Yes. It's all in the mind. That's all. It's all in the mind. Attachment, vexation, suffering, pleasure, it's all in the mind. Nothing to do with physical. It's all in the mind. This is why we can fix it. And this is why it doesn't matter what age you are. This is why it doesn't matter whether you are black or white. It doesn't matter what language you speak. It doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman or an adult or a child. It doesn't matter because it's all in the mind. What shape of your body doesn't matter. Whether you're short or tall doesn't matter. Whether you're handicapped, who cares? Doesn't matter. You lose an arm and a leg. So what? You've got boils all over your body and you're bedridden. So what? It's all in the mind. For as long as you're sound of mind, you can fix this problem. If you go mad, in the conventional sense, then of course, it's difficult to help that kind of person because they can't understand what is being said. And also if you are a duhetuka pratisandilabhi, if your birth is by-rooted, alobha adosa, then you don't have the shana sampatti. That's the problem. So you will never become a sotapanna, not in this birth. We talked about that in the last sermon. But that's just a side fact. What we all really need to worry about is, let's make the most of our human lives. Let's contemplate on the fact that sabba sankara is attiyati harayati jigucchati. Etang santang etam panitam yadidang sabba sankara samato sab upadipati nissaggo tanhakyo virago nirodho nibbananti. Is the eradication of sabba sankara, eradication of sankara, eradication of attachment. This is what Nibbana is, and that's all in the mind. So we can all do that. No matter what walk of life we've come from, we can all do that. Just strive for it. Don't give up. That is the one thing I have to ask of you. Don't let your age be a hindrance. Don't let that put you off. Some of you might have started this young. I started it towards my middle age. There are others here who started it very young. They're extremely fortunate. So what do I have to do? Just sit here sulking about it? Oh, if only I were your age, I would have done this. That's the defeatist mentality. The Bodhisattva started to sit under the Bodhi tree and start to contemplate this at the age of 30. At 35 was when he attained Buddhahood. And there were plenty of other monks who at very late stages in their life became Sotapan, Sakurdagami, Anagami, Arahat, as well as nuns. So don't let anything come in your way. Age is not a barrier here. I want you all to remember this. Age is not a barrier. Whether you are a man or a woman, your sex is not a barrier. What beliefs you have, whether you are a Christian, whether you are a Muslim, whether you are a Hindu, none of that matters. Because what we are talking about is a philosophy. It's a science. F equals ma. To whom? Muslims only, right? Force of gravity acts on whom only? Christians only, right? Force of gravity doesn't act on anybody else. Yes? Yes? No, much the same. Anicca dukkha anatta. Universal. Universal. So we can all do this. I will vouch for that. You can all do this. The only promise I need from all of you is that you will strive for it. Because remember, I'm spending time that I have left in my life, very precious time that I have left in my life, talking to you. I don't particularly enjoy doing these sermons in English, and I've said that to you quite honestly in the past. I don't particularly enjoy that because it's not a natural language to me. Yes, I can speak it, but it doesn't come naturally. Buddhist teaching doesn't come naturally in any other language except for Pali and Sinhala. I don't believe it comes naturally in any other language. A lot of the words, this is why I have to use the Sinhala words. How many times did I say Ashwada and Pelima just in this sermon? There's a word called Asuchi. Chitteta suvadai novana. What's the word I can use in English for that? I can't use the yes word. It's not going to convey the same meaning. But a direct, if you look it up in the dictionary, that's what it's going to say. Asuchi is that. I can't use that word. So therefore I always have this problem. How do I express this in a way that you can understand it? And not just you, because a lot of you will understand both English and Sinhala, but there are a lot of people listening to these sermons online, young children. We have to do something for them as well. Because whenever something happens in our country, right, disaster, who helps us? Who helps us all stand back on our feet? Is our brothers, sisters who live in our countries. So we can't just forget about them. You know, we are all in this together. We are all together and we are all alone. Both at the same time. We are all together and yet we are all alone. Don't forget. Do for yourself for the other person. Help yourself for the other person. Not help the other person. Help yourself for the other person. So strive, ladies and gentlemen, and you all must. You know, if you come to these sermons, I want you all to strive for this goal. This is what we do on a daily basis, every day of every waking hour. Strive for this. Because I know that this is possible. I wouldn't have given up the life I had if I had a shadow of a doubt that this is an adventure or an expedition or an experiment. I wouldn't have given up what I had. It's only after I realized none of that is really worthwhile. This is the only thing that's worth doing. Therefore, from that day forward, I strive every waking moment. And it's that time that we spend with you. So I want you all, if you come along to these sermons, strive. Therefore, when I ask the question, how many of you did spend those 15 minutes at home meditating? I hope all of you were able to put your hand up. If you didn't, then make sure next time I ask you, you can give me a yes. So next week we have the meditation program, because it's the last Sunday of the month. So we'll continue to do it in that way. Please come having rested. I don't want you to fall asleep in the middle of the program, because unlike in a sermon, I can't stop and I can't interrupt other people to keep waking you up. Sometimes I clear my throat, but that's not very effective because it disturbs other people and it's not that good. It's not very good to do that. So please come having taken a good rest. If possible, avoid taking a heavy meal. And remember, this is a battle. It's not an easy battle. And all the karmas that you've done in the past to block someone's Nibbana, they'll start to come and bear fruit. Because you're striving for your Nibbana. If you've done any bad karmas to stop other people from attaining Nibbana, like parents, sometimes children want to go and ordain. Parents say, no, not under my what you want. This is all blocking someone else's Nibbana. The consequences can be devastating. So, you've got to decide what you want to do with your children. I can't make that call for you. But what I'm saying is, at least come having rested. And don't take a heavy meal before you come, because it's going to be hot. Usually it is, at afternoon. But please come and try to stay awake. Bring a bottle of water or something and freshen yourself up. I'll give you further instructions next week. But next week, as a reminder, is going to be the meditation session. Okay. So on that note, we'll conclude the sermon. Is it English one today? Yes. So we chant the Arya Maitreya. I don't want you to chant with me. I want you to contemplate on the meaning of these words and spread this Arya Maitreya to all beings out there, particularly at this moment in time, ladies and gentlemen. As you know, there's a lot of trouble out there. So people need your blessing. The energy of the Arya Maitreya is so required at this moment in time. Everyone in our country needs it, every soul. So pass that loving kindness, that compassion to all sentient beings, especially to those people who are sacrificing their lives to protect and preserving our country, members of the armed forces, as well as, remember, we have no foes on this journey. There's no friends, there are no foes. It's just another person. So we have no enemies. Right? So whether they fought with us or against us, doesn't matter. It is now time to pass the Arya Maitreya in the hope that they all be able to extinguish the fires of Raga, Dvesha, Moha and attain the bliss of Nibbana. May I and all beings in all worlds be freed from the fire of birth, freed from the fire of decay, freed from the fire of illness, freed from the fire of death, freed from the fire of sorrow, freed from the fire of lamentation, healed with the ultimate bliss of Nibbana, healed with the ultimate bliss of Nibbana, healed with the ultimate bliss of Nibbana. May I and all beings in all worlds be freed from the fire of suffering, freed from the fire of discontentment, freed from the fire of exhaustion, freed from the fire of disappointment, freed from the fire of clinging on to the five aggregates, healed with the ultimate bliss of Nibbana, healed with the ultimate bliss of Nibbana, healed with the ultimate bliss of Nibbana. May I and all beings in all worlds be freed from the suffering of samsara, freed from the disease of samsara, freed from the fear of samsara, freed from the fire of samsara, freed from the burning of samsara, freed from the sorrow of samsara, freed from the lust of samsara, freed from the flames of samsara, freed from the clutches of samsara, healed with the ultimate bliss of Nibbana, healed with the ultimate bliss of Nibbana, healed with the ultimate bliss of Nibbana. The karma worlds are in despair. May I and all beings be freed from the karma worlds. The rupa worlds are in despair. May I and all beings be freed from the rupa worlds. The arupa worlds are in despair. May I and all beings be freed from the arupa worlds. All worlds are in despair. May I and all beings be freed from all the worlds. Nibbana is the only salvation. May I and all beings attain Nibbana. Nibbana is the only salvation. May I and all beings attain Nibbana. Nibbana is the only salvation. May I and all beings attain Nibbana. Letting go is the only salvation. May I and all beings let go. Detachment is the only salvation. May I and all beings be detached. Being freed is the only salvation. May I and all beings be freed. Nibbana is the only salvation. May I and all beings attain Nibbana. Nibbana is the only salvation. May I and all beings attain Nibbana. Nibbana is the only salvation. May I and all beings attain Nibbana. May I and all beings in all worlds be freed from the bondage of lust, freed from the bondage of aversion, freed from the bondage of delusion, freed from the bondage of Mara, healed with the eternal bliss of Nibbana, 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 healed with the eternal bliss of Nibbana. Okay. Every opportunity you get, come and visit the monastery. It's not because it's great to have a lot of people here, because the more people that come, the more we have to do. We like to spend our time up there, in solitude, under the trees, doing our meditation. But you need the help of the Kalanavata just as much as I need it, just as much as I needed it to be here today. So every opportunity you get, come and make use of it. That's not to say you can only find it here. There may be other places where you can find it. Wherever, seek it. Because how much do we charge you to be here? You know, if you conventionally, if you invite a Swami Vahanse to do a sermon, conventionally, and I'm not saying whether it's right or wrong, there's usually a lot of expenses. Now imagine it's an English sermon. How much do you think you'd have to spend on that? Don't answer. Because there are some of you who need that medium of instruction. It's that language barrier that some of you have. This is why we can't say, well, sod it. If you can't understand Sinhala, then so be it, not my problem. That's when we can't say, talk to the hand. Because I think every one of you here will have fed me at some point. And in our journey in samsara, there's not a single one of you who's not been a father to me. There's not a single one of you who's not been a mother to me. Much as you have been a mother and a father to me in samsara, I think most of you will have at some point at least come to the monastery, maybe offered a glass of water. Perhaps it was you who donated the robe that I'm wearing right now. Perhaps it was you who fed me today. Because I depend on you for the 4 requisites. This is the way of the Mahasangha. We can't earn a living. We depend on you for that. But in return, we have something priceless to offer. But we can't be chasing you to give it. You have to want it. You have to come and ask for it. When you come and ask for it, we will give it to you in abundance. So come and ask for it. All you need to do is be here. When you're here, we know you want it. So come along every opportunity you get. In future there will be other programs. In future actually we'll have every day of the year there will be a meditation program. So this is coming very shortly. As soon as the works in the Dharma hall is completed, we'll be able to do that, because in the afternoons, as you will know, those of you who come along to the Saturday and Wednesday programs, in the afternoons it's very difficult in there because of the heat. So as soon as the ceiling goes in, we'll start to have daily programs. Whenever you find the time, you can come and join them. Meditation programs, and Guru Swami Nuansa will be there giving instruction, and we can do more English programs as well for those who need it. It's whatever you want. Every time the Sangha Council gets together at our monastery, we discuss how else can we help the people who visit us. So last week I got together with my fellow monks, and going back to my old experience as a manager, I gave them a task, and that was to come up with SMART goals. I asked them to come up with SMART goals because each of our senior monks have a responsibility, a duty within the monastery. There's one monk who looks after the well-being and spiritual development of other monks. There's another monk who looks after the spiritual well-being and general well-being of the anagarikas. There's another monk who looks after the facilities at the monastery, making sure that while you're here, you can stay here comfortably. There's another monk who looks after the requisites, the Dharmadhammahandru, as you will know, because I think he's who you will have most of the time when you visit us. So each of our high ordained monks has a duty, and it is my role to coordinate all of that and give them leadership. So I tasked each of them with SMART goals for them to come up with within their own sections. How is it that we can help our devotees who come here further? What else can we do for them? So they have now been tasked with that, and they'll be coming back to me with their ideas, because it is my vision to actually lead this monastery as an organization, not just another temple. I think that is why we have come here with that duty. All that experience we have gained as a lay person, you must account for something, right? The people who've come here to make this happen, I don't believe they're just simply ordinary people. They're special. Starting from Guru Hamdru, very special people. All of you, very special. This is why I see the same faces every day. Very special. No matter, I'm sure on a weekend you'll have a million other things you could be doing right now. But still, you're here. Special. That's special. That's saying something. That's saying you have a purpose, you have a goal, you have a vision, and it has to be aligned with the same purpose, goal and vision that we have. So now at our monastery we have a vision statement. Hudekma? What is it? Hudekma? Nivan Avbodhe Pinisai. Exclusively for the purpose of attaining Nibbana. And now we have mission statements. We have 6 of them. So this organization will be led as an organization going into the future. So we have a service to provide you who are our service users. You have come here to achieve your goal in life, because we are not happy with doing whatever we can think of from time to time while you come and feed us and clothe us and give us shelter. We want to do more, and as much as we possibly can, without sacrificing the time that we have put aside to our Nibbana, of course. So all that will happen in future, and you will start to see some changes happening, all for the better, all for your good. But at the same time, if you have ideas, if you have suggestions, if you have things you think, if we could do this way, slightly differently, that would be better, we're always welcoming your suggestions, because we want to help you so you can help yourself. So that's just another sideline. If you have suggestions, ideas, then I think there's a suggestions box in the Dharma hall. Please provide your ideas. So speak to Dharandam Mahandru when you meet him, or at the end of sermons if you have an opportunity to talk to me. Ultimately, all of this is for one purpose only. Once you have become an arahant, I don't want to see your face again. Don't come back. Okay. We'll transfer the merits and we'll conclude the sermon. First and foremost, let us once again take a moment to reflect on the fact that it is because of the Supremely Enlightened One, the Perfect One, the Omniscient One, that we have the gift of Dhamma today. It is because of His infinite compassion towards all sentient beings, through which He dedicated Himself throughout many incalculable eons in samsara to fulfill the perfections and to preach the Dhamma, to give us and pass on this gift to us, that we have the gift of Dhamma today. It is also because of the Bhikkhu, Bhikkhunis, Upasak, Upasikas who dedicated their lives and sacrificed their lives on some occasions to protect and preserving the Dhamma. It is thanks to them that today we have the Tripitaka, which we can study, analyze and comprehend and help us attain Nibbana. Let us also take a moment to transfer these merits to all the members of the Mahasangha, wherever they may be, throughout this world, those men and women who have donned robes and gone forth, having dedicated their lives to practicing the Dhamma and attaining the noble states, and at the same time they have dedicated time out of their lives to propagating this Dhamma, to helping us and you to practice the path and seek your salvation. Let us all take a moment to transfer merits to all of them, not forgetting for a moment about the members of the Mahasangha who are resident in your local temples and the nuns who are resident in your local nunneries. Although you have come along here to this monastery today to make your offerings, to listen to the Dhamma, do not forget that it is those members of the Mahasangha and the nuns who are resident in your local temples and nunneries who have always been by your side. Through thick and thin, come rain or shine, it is there you send your children to the Dhampasal. So, with much gratitude in our hearts and in our minds, let us all take a moment to transfer the merits that we have all acquired to them. If any of them have today been born in the woeful plains, may through the power of these merits they redeem themselves from those woeful plains and be born in the blissful plains. May through the power of these merits they abstain from the unmeritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the noble eightfold path, and attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let us also take a moment to transfer merits to the Devas, Brahmas, spirits, demons, and the dead that we invited at the start of this sermon. All those beings who will have been mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, uncles, aunts, nephews, nieces, grandparents, teachers, colleagues, and so on and so forth in this infinitely long journey in samsara, in whatever capacity they might have helped you, in whichever shape, way or form. Let us take a moment to remind ourselves of all their dedication, their commitment that they have made to our happiness in whichever life that we might have met them. May they all be able to rejoice in the merits that we have all acquired today. If any of them have been born in the woeful plains, may through the power of these merits they be able to redeem themselves from those woeful plains and be born in the blissful plains. May through the power of these merits they abstain from the unmeritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the noble eightfold path, and attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let us also take a moment to transfer merits to everyone who has made this event possible. Anyone and everyone who might have invited you to be here today, perhaps by providing you with transport, or maybe by offering you a glass of water, perhaps by ushering you to a seat, or in whatever capacity helped you make your stay here as comfortable as it could be. And also there are those who have and also continue to help propagating these sermons and spreading it throughout the world in the form of transcribed sermons, as well as spreading the message about these sermons to other people in other countries, such that they may be able to join and listen to these sermons and seek their salvation. May they all be able to rejoice in the merits that we have all acquired today. May through the power of these merits they abstain from the unmeritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the noble eightfold path, and attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let us also take a moment to transfer merits to the members of the armed forces, as well as the police force, who have dedicated their lives to protecting and preserving our country and our nation. It is because of their dedication that today we are able to live in peace and harmony, and we are able to practice the path, put aside fears and worries, and focus our attention on the Dhamma, and to be able to practice the path. May they all be able to rejoice in the merits that we have all acquired today, as well as those men and women who might have lost their lives in the wars that have been, as well as in the recent problems that we have all had to face recently. Be friend or foe, may they all be able to rejoice in the merits that we have all acquired today. If any of them have been born in the woeful plains, may through the power of these merits they redeem themselves from those woeful plains and be born in the blissful plains. May through the power of these merits they abstain from the unmeritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the noble eightfold path, and attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let's also take a moment to transfer merits to those men and women who have dedicated their lives to leading this country, protecting this country, and developing this country. If not for them, today you and I will have to be fulfilling those roles and setting aside time in our valuable human lives to such duties and responsibilities. It is thanks to them that today you and I have been able to dedicate our lives, dedicate our precious human life towards practicing the path. Therefore, may they all be able to rejoice in the merits that we have all acquired today. May through the power of these merits they abstain from the unmeritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the noble eightfold path, and attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And finally, may through the course of all the merits that we have all acquired today, in making offerings to the Buddha, the Dhamma, as well as any offerings you have made to the Mahasangha, as well as merits that you will have earned in listening to this sermon and preaching this sermon, and also in transferring merits, may the merits that we have all acquired in doing all those meritorious deeds be transferred to those men and women much the same as yourselves, wherever they may be throughout this world, who have dedicated their life to practicing the path. Come rain or shine, come day or night, may they all be able to be empowered and energized such that they all be able to attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana, and may they all be May we be able to witness through them the advent of many hundreds of thousands of Arahatun Mahanses in this blessed land, in our very lives itself. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And finally, may you and I and everyone who has contributed in any way, shape or form to making this event possible, to make this sermon possible, and who has joined us wherever, in whatever capacity, be able to rejoice in these merits and be able to become one of those Arahatun Mahanses, one of those Arahat Mihinin Mahanses in this human life itself and in the era of the Gautama Supreme Buddha itself. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Members of the Mahasangha will now transfer their blessings to you. Raga ginnen midetva Dvesha ginnen midetva Moha ginnen midetva Nibbana parama sukhayen Sukhita taravetva Nibbana parama sukhayen Sukhita taravetva Mamada siyalu loka siyalu satvayo Nibbana parama sukhayen Sukhita taravetva Nibbana parama sukhayen Sukhita taravetva Nibbana parama sukhayen Sukhita taravetva. Tunuruwange suvisi ananta maha guna belen siru loka silu sattayoma Nibbana parama sukhayen Sukhita taravetva. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. May I and all beings in all worlds be freed from the fires of desire. May I and all beings in all worlds be freed from the fires of aversion. May I and all beings in all worlds be freed from the fires of delusion. May I and all beings in all worlds attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. May the noble triple gem be with you all forever. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.